I did everything right and they indicted me.
And I don't know what the I'm doing. Antifa!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. So excited to be here with you guys today. We have, as always, a really amazing program. We have 3 different segments that we're doing. And what's pretty cool about this show is that I think each guest that we have on gets the connections between or among the different segments, because we're going to be talking about Gaza, Palestine. We're going to be talking about Venezuela, and we're going to be talking about ICE. But again, as you'll see shortly, all of these guests get the connections that exist between these different realms in a way that not everyone does. So it's very exciting that they're going to be joining us. During the last segment, we're going to be talking to Anthony Aguilar, the Green Beret whistleblower who exposed the crimes, some of the countless crimes Israel was committing. In particular, he exposed what they were doing at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, luring people to their deaths. He shared a very disturbing story, some of you may remember, about a young boy who was killed, and he had video of that, and he's been talking about Gaza nonstop ever since that. And then our second guest is Camila Escalante, who is a journalist who's based mostly reports from South America. But before that, we're going to talk to someone who is making their Katie Halper Show debut, Leena Widdi, and she is with PAL-Awda, New York, New Jersey. Before we bring these guests on, though, please do, as always, we gotta ask you to like the stream. You have a choice. You can watch this horizontally or vertically. It's up to you. We give you both options. Please give it a thumbs up. That is a very easy way to support the show, to beat back the algorithmic suppression. As people who are watching this, I'm sure know, it's not very popular to talk about basically any of the issues that we're talking about on today's show. And there is a lot of suppression that happens. So one of the ways that we try to fight against that is by asking you to like the stream, because that helps algorithmically. Also, please subscribe. This is so exciting. We are at over 400,000 subscribers. So thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. And thank you, of course, to the whole team who works on the show. If you can become Patreon supporters, please do that. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. For $5 a month, you get all sorts of extended and extra content. If you can't pull that off, you can still support the show at $1 a month. And that lets you sleep well at night, knowing that you're making the show possible, because we really could not do the show without your support at Patreon. Also, another reason you definitely want to make sure to subscribe is that we've been doing these basically like extra streams we've been doing recently, because, you know, we did one on a Saturday about Venezuela. We did one, I think, on a Wednesday about Pakistan. And we will probably keep doing that because there's so much breaking news and we can't really get to it in one show. So a way that you can make sure that you don't miss those is by becoming subscribers. And again, to do that, you hit subscribe and then the bell. Now, Brad, you always tell me that the comments or the chat is like the sun. Don't look directly at it. But I did see someone said, I'm frozen. Am I frozen or am I not frozen?
I was just very quickly trying to come up with a frozen joke, but no, as far as I can tell. Yeah.
Weird. Okay. A couple of people, but maybe they're in. No, it's one person.
And now saying going in and out, and someone saying you're back. Others are saying Betar. Not frozen for me.
Some are saying you were frozen, so that they were telling the truth. Okay, that's good to know. I wonder if I should I refresh? Should I come in and then come out? Should I what's the word? Plug my I'm Etherneted, but should I do my Wi-Fi?
Well, I'm seeing everyone saying you're good.
I'm a very good person, but I'm talking about my Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, I think that you're good. I think that then if it happens again, then maybe I can come on and fill a minute or two. Yeah. And you could like leave and come back, but I think you're good for right now.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to keep going. We are so excited again to be bringing you this show. As I was saying, we got a great lineup for you. And one of the guests is making their Katie Halper Show debut, which is very exciting. I did ask you all to rate and review if you listen to this on a podcast. And please like if you're watching now. And if you're watching later, also please like. And what else? Oh, we may have a fourth guest, a surprise guest. I'm going to see if that will happen, which would be very cool. Hold on one second. Let me just do one thing to see if this could possibly happen. 1 second. Hold on. Because then we would scoop another place. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Back to the show. All right, guys. Sorry about that. So many exciting things happen. You see, this is why we need to do an extra stream, and it's actually a good thing probably that I froze, because it gave us some extra time to do this. Okay. So we are so excited to be bringing on to the show our first guest. Leena Widdi is a child of Palestinians in exile, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She's an organizer with PAL-Awda New York, New Jersey, the oldest Palestinian-led organization in the New York City area. For the past 2.5 years, PAL-Awda has led a campaign to stop Israeli real estate events selling Palestinian land in New York City and other cities around the country. Leena is also a movement lawyer and civil rights attorney. So welcome to the show, Leena.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much. And big shout out. When I spoke to you earlier, I did compliment you. So I hope I don't give you a big head, but I do really appreciate the New York accent. So thank you for bringing that to the city. Yeah. As a fellow New Yorker. So tell us a little bit about PAL-Awda, what you guys do. But also, of course, we want to know about this recent land sale event, which was held at a synagogue in Queens. It was on Thursday, January 8th. And this led to protests against the sale, as well as pro-Israel counter protests. So set up, though, what these land sales even are, and then what the protest was.
So first of all, just to talk a little bit about PAL-Awda, we started in 2001. So it was actually our 25th anniversary. And shortly after we were established, 9/11 happened, and we found ourselves being, as one of my elder comrades likes to say, baptized by fire. We were responding to the wave of imperialist, the heightened wave of imperialist Islamophobia and the war on terror and surveillance in our communities. And we did a lot of anti-war, anti-imperialist, anti-surveillance organizing. A lot of that organizing obviously has developed as we respond to the situation in Palestine and the situation in the global South and the ways that U.S. empire is manifesting. Since the genocide, this iteration of the genocide, because the Israeli genocide has been ongoing since the existence of the Zionist project in the late 1800s, early 1900s. We have started this campaign against the stolen land real estate events, and the campaign has been twofold. So it's been a direct action component, which entails the protests like the one that we saw last week, and also there's a legal component to it. So the legal component, just very briefly, entails serving cease and desist letters on the hosts and the organizers of the event. So that includes, generally these events are organized by Israeli real estate companies who are often partnering with US-based real estate companies, and they're hosted, and we're seeing this more and more frequently in synagogues or other Jewish religious spaces. And so we serve cease and desist letters on the organizers and the hosts, informing them of the laws that they would be in violation of by hosting the sale. And early on, we were able to successfully get many sales canceled just by serving these cease and desist letters. We've also served memos to the Attorney General of New York and New Jersey, actually, very detailed, lengthy memos informing them specifically of the claims that we're making against these different groups, telling them who the parties are, what laws they're violating. And actually in New Jersey, I can't remember exactly when, but sometime in 2024, the New Jersey Attorney General's office did start investigating some of these real estate event organizers. We unfortunately haven't seen the same success in New York. And instead, what we've seen is a complete manipulation of the narrative by politicians, accusing protesters of anti-Semitism, trying to create this absolutely fictional narrative that we are just going to places of worship, choosing to protest at places of worship for the mere fact that they're Jewish places of worship or Jewish places of congregation, and intentionally ignoring the fact that we're protesting sales of stolen Palestinian land that by any standard are illegal, and that we're only protesting at those locations because those are the locations where these organizers chose to host these sales.
Right. Which is so gross. It's so gross.
It's absolutely absurd. It's it's a complete manipulation of the narrative, a complete it's just absolute dishonesty.
Right.
And I think more and more, as I said, we've been doing these for about 2.5 years. It took quite some time for us to even get some traction on these protests or have anybody talk about them. And now I think a lot of people are realizing that, right under our noses in New York City, there is a huge pipeline of settlers moving to occupied Palestine. And I want to be clear, PAL-Awda, Awda means return. And we believe in the right of return for all Palestinians, regardless of whether those Palestinians are from, the West Bank or from Gaza or from Jerusalem or from what is called modern day Israel, or what we call 48, the territories that were taken in 1948. And so we believe that any settlement inside of historic Palestine is immoral and it's illegitimate. But this is low-hanging fruit, right? This is, by anyone's definition, it's illegal, even if we subscribe to the standards of law, which are often, especially in this country and in the international law framework, just used to maintain the status quo.
Right. So can you just explain briefly how this theft and then sale happens?
Yeah. So many of the way that settlements pop up really is that settlers will create an outpost in a Palestinian village. So, we can talk about Hebron, which is an area that many people are very familiar with. They'll create an outpost and there will be armed settlers who are there harassing Palestinians day in and day out. And they often have the protection of the Israeli military. And then often what happens is that the outpost expands. People start moving in, and literally you see armed settlers going into Palestinians' homes and throwing their stuff into the street, beating them up with the protection of the Israeli military, who threatens to arrest Palestinians if they protest. And the idea of these settlements, usually the most sought after settlements by the Israeli government are settlements that are, generally now we're seeing settlements that are like on the border of Jerusalem and the West Bank, in the West Bank, but closer to Jerusalem, because what the Israeli government wants to do is create a contiguous Jewish only area. And obviously settlements in areas that are fertile and areas that are more convenient for the settler project.
Right. And so maybe this is probably an obvious question, but what laws are they breaking, just so that people understand very clearly? As you said, this is low-hanging fruit. This isn't even an issue of whether you believe in Zionism or the state of Israel. Oh. Uh-oh. I'm telling you, Betar got in there or Mossad got in there. Hold on one second. One second.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. Did Mossad get in there?
Yeah, so you're saying this isn't even an issue of whether you believe in Zionism.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's just illegal. So can you just briefly lay out, and
yeah. So
it doesn't have to be a deep dive, just what makes this
these
illegal.
sales, just to give a bit more background, in order to get access to these sales generally, and again, we're seeing this more and more as a response to our protests, the location of the sale is not disclosed. There's a flyer that says generally something like, move to Israel to live in the best Anglo neighborhoods. And they use that language. And there will be like a location, just the neighborhood, right? So the one on January 8th, they just said Kew Garden Hills, and there's an email or a phone number that you can contact to gain access. Generally, and we're seeing this is changing, but they ask for a state ID. Now we're seeing that they ask for WhatsApp numbers. They ask for the name of your shul and your rabbi, and then they contact that rabbi. So this is not just this isn't even, we're making this accessible only to Jews, which of course is illegal under like New York State human rights law, under New York State fair housing law, under federal law, but also it's explicitly only Zionist Jews, right? If you gave them the name of your shul and you went to an anti-Zionist synagogue, or even maybe like a liberal Zionist synagogue, you wouldn't be given access to these events. So that first of all, that is a violation of New York State fair housing laws, of New York State human rights law, which prohibit the discriminatory sale or advertisement of housing, even if that housing is outside of the country. You're still doing the discriminatory act inside the US, inside New York State. And you're advertising housing that is only available to Jews, right? So even if they let everybody come to these events, advertising housing that's only exclusively available to Jewish people per Israeli law is a violation of New York State fair housing laws and federal fair housing laws and New York State human rights law. It's also, and what some of the arguments that we made in our memo to the Attorney General is these are a violation of federal laws that prohibit aiding and abetting genocide and aiding and abetting ethnic cleansing. Because in order for these settlements to exist, in order for people from New York to move to occupied Palestine, they are actively engaging in ethnic cleansing, and ethnic cleansing is a prerequisite to those settlements existing.
Right.
And there's other laws like conspiracy to harm persons overseas. There's violations of international law, violations of the Geneva Convention, which prohibits the transfer of occupiers of the civilian, quote unquote, civilian population of an occupying power to the occupied territories, which is a war crime. And again, you don't actually have just aiding and abetting in those things is enough for you to be criminally liable for them, even if you're not that person doing the actual transfer.
Wow. Yeah. I'm just going to show what some of these images look like. These signs that you just mentioned. 1 second. I don't think, Brad, we have those, but I'm just going to do a screen share. Okay, just so people can get a sense of what these things look like and like the language, as you mentioned. Why is Google Chrome telling me? Okay, let's see. Something weird is happening today with technology. Okay, here we go. So here, for instance, you have, Israel real estate event. Join us for local Israel Israel real estate event featuring a new and exciting Anglo community just 15 minutes from Jerusalem. Offered at exceptional pre-sale pricing along with a selection of new developments in Israel's most sought-after locations. And then they named them. Meet experienced Israeli real estate professionals, compare projects and communities, and receive full guidance from purchase through key delivery. Jesus Christ, key delivery. And then it just says Kew Gardens Hills, Kew Garden Hills, New York. So obviously it's a neighborhood. It's not a specific address. And then you can make those phone calls. And here's the little different neighborhoods you can buy. That one has a pool. And
Ma'ali Odamim, by the way, which is the one at the top right, that's in the West Bank.
Okay.
So it's just very, very open.
Right. Yeah. It's really unbelievable. Call for specific locations. Obviously, they don't want to tell people where they are, but here they have a bunch of these that are happening in New Jersey. Jesus Christ. We are thrilled to have another capital trip across the U.S. starting in a couple weeks. Shmuley will be traveling to Atlanta, Chicago, New York, and New Jersey next month, holding sessions with other Israel real estate industry experts. We'd love to see you at one of these events. And then it gives you all the ones. So yeah, it's pretty gross. Capital. I don't even know what that.
Yeah, that's one of the. That's one of the major companies.
Okay, got it. Yeah, and I guess that's a little pun because it's IL is like Israel. I was trying to figure that. Okay, very clever. Yeah. So, talk about what happened the other day at this protest that got some media attention and a lot of criticism, including from kind of politicians we consider to be allies.
Yeah, so this was same situation, a real estate event selling land in the occupied West Bank, hosted at a synagogue in Kew Garden Hills, and Betar and other organizations called for a counter protest. And when we arrived, there were barricades that were set up, like extremely extensive barricades around like several blocks, completely blocking off access to the block where the synagogue was on. So nobody was even close to the synagogue or the yeshiva, which was around the corner. And, there were many, and our organization, by the way, is a multiracial organization. So it's Palestinian-led, but we have many Jewish comrades who are members and even on the leadership of PAL-Awda. But, there were people from Neturei Karta, from JVP, from Jews Against White Supremacy, many Jewish organizations who were there with us and who say, hosting these sales inside of synagogues and equating the actions of the state of Israel with the Jewish people, that is more of a threat to my Jewish identity than my safety. Anyways, so
that is what this pervert. I mean, again, that's what a disgusting way to weaponize religion to act as a literal shield for your crimes.
Yeah, and it's very intentional because they are relying on
100%.
They're relying on the manipulation that will come as a result of that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we experienced, as we always do, a lot of Zionist violence. There were Zionists, spitting at people, attempting to continuously attack people, holding Kahanist flags, and Kahanism is the ideology that Baruch Goldstein, adhered to when he went into the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron and gunned down tens of Palestinians who were praying.
Right.
And
that's the Ben-Gvir, like Ben-Gvir's ideology.
Exactly. And Ben-Gvir, who famously had a framed photo of Baruch Goldstein in his home. And
we actually have video. Let's show some video of the protests and the counter protests. So that would be A2, Brad.
USA!
So there, you get a sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we protested outside for a couple of hours. Again, we because of the NYPD, we weren't even, close to the synagogue or to the yeshiva. And that was it. And then, the next day, there was a video that went viral of a chant saying, we support Hamas here. And of course, all of these politicians respond immediately to the call and silent about the violations of international law and New York state law that are happening in that building under the cover of a religious institution, and instead condemn protesters for a chant.
Right.
And then what's worse is that they, of course, equate this protest chant with actual anti-Semitic violence that people experience, like the synagogue bombing that happened a couple of days later,
right,
which is absolutely absurd. It's a complete distortion of actual power, right? The people who have the power in these situations are white supremacists and Zionists. It's not people at a protest chanting in support of a Palestinian resistance organization or waving Palestine flags, even if that happens in front of a synagogue.
Right.
Because again, the thing that we should be focusing on is that people are using a synagogue to sell stolen Palestinian land in the midst of a genocide, in the midst of the most expansive land grabs that we have seen in decades in Palestine. And there's just absolute silence on that.
Yeah. It's almost like these people, I mean, obviously it's very cynical and it's a way to use like a synagogue as a shield, but it also is kind of, it's so cynical and disgusting. And it's almost like they're trying to create anti-Semitism. It's like they're committing crimes in a space, in a house of worship, in a Jewish house of worship. And, people like, especially because when you do that, and then you also claim that Israel, being pro-Israel, is being Jewish, like that will create anti-Semitism. How will it not? Like, what is the long game here? Like a genocide is being live streamed by a state that claims to represent all Jews. It's just like,
right, claims to represent all Jews and puts millions and millions of dollars towards perpetuating this idea that it is equivalent to Judaism. And even Jews who denounce Zionism, they're not Jewish. Right. That's what the state of Israel says. Yeah, that's what Zionism says. And it's true. These people are desecrating a religious space.
Yeah. I know, that's the irony. They're the ones doing it.
And I do think to an extent, like anti-Semitism is absolutely helpful for the state of Israel and for the settler project.
Yeah, they need it.
And so like, they definitely need it. And like I said, they are continuing to host them in religious spaces because they are depending on the guarantee that what will be obscured is what they're doing, because any response to what they're doing is just anti-Semitism.
Exactly. Right. They want people to look at that and say, oh, look at these terrible people. They're protesting a synagogue. They're so anti-Semitic. They hate Judaism. Right. As opposed to look at these people protesting something that is illegal, that is happening in a synagogue because the people are choosing to hold it in the synagogue. There's nothing inherently like religious about what they're doing, and they're choosing to desecrate religion.
Not. Right. In fact, it's like it's a capitalist commercial transaction.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if you're like, I feel like even if I was a Zionist, which I really can't imagine, but I was also a religious Jew, I would not want to do that there. Like I would want to rent like a convention center or something, just not to do that. But it's really disgusting. So do you want to show the viral video, or do you just want to show the comments from the politicians? It's up to you.
Let's show the comments from the politicians.
Right, yeah, I agree, because also could get us canceled or taken off of YouTube. So let's take a look at one response. This was from Zohran Mamdani.
What do you think of those protesters?
Can you say it one more time?
What do you think of those protesters that said we support Hamas here in Queens?
I think that language is wrong. I think that language has no place in New York City. And what would you say, sir?
For Henry, are you concerned with alienating any endorsement?
Okay. And then AOC made comments, and there was, I think, probably one of the worst, I think, honestly, one of the worst things that was said, hold on one second, was that, okay. And then here's another video of Zohran Mamdani getting asked a very good question, I think. Let's show this video. Sorry, that Brad, that would be what is that? A4.
I was just wondering, like, why you didn't condemn both sides, I guess.
So, can you say the last part?
If you have a comment on the other side.
Well, I absolutely am in opposition to the sale of land in the occupied West Bank. It's something in violation of international law, and that comes from my belief in the importance of following international law.
So basically, he was asked, why did you just condemn the protesters who said we support Hamas and not take time to condemn the actual illegal land sale?
Yeah. You know, when our last stolen land sale at the Park East Synagogue, which was before Mamdani's inauguration, he, in his comment, you know, about it, condemned the protest in front of a synagogue and also condemned the sale of stolen land. And again, you know, we're seeing what is expected. He's moving more and more and more to the center. He didn't even mention the sales until he was explicitly asked about it. And this is a person who, you know, one of the biggest things that he did prior to running for mayor was propose the Not on Our Dime bill, which, you know, we actually, in some of our stolen land presentations, talked about the Not on Our Dime bill and told people to support it because it would explicitly prosecute these kinds of sales. The purpose of it is to prevent charitable organizations or 501c3s, which all of these organizations are that are hosting these sales, from engaging in illegal and discriminatory activity or raising funds or somehow facilitating settler activity in the occupied West Bank. This is exactly what they're doing. Again, low-hanging fruit.
Right. And can you just
completely abandon that?
Can you say in one sentence what Not on Our Dime is? We've had guests talk about it, but just so.
Yeah. So Not on Our Dime is a bill that Zohran Mamdani and one other person proposed in the New York State and State Assembly. And the idea is to prohibit New York-based charitable organizations from fundraising for the Israeli military or for engaging in any activity that facilitates settler violence in the occupied West Bank. And that would mean stripping them of their 501c3 status, which again could be done here very easily, and also potentially prosecuting and investigating them through the Attorney General's office.
Right. Now there was another tweet that I thought was even worse. Another comment from another local politician. Let's take a look at this this tweet, which is from one second. This is a tweet that is from Shana Hanif, who is a council member who serves New York City's 39th council district. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is Shahana Hanif. Mississippi's oldest and largest synagogue and two of their Torah scrolls were burned yesterday on Shabbat in a horrific anti-Semitic attack days after protesters chanted, "We support Hamas" here in New York City. These chants are anti-Semitic and deeply harmful. You can oppose land sales in the West Bank without supporting violence against Jews. Yesterday's arson in Mississippi is a stark reminder of the consequences of hate. I stand with my Jewish neighbors and constituents and recommit to keeping each other and our houses of worship safe. Okay, so this is like really takes it another step. So in case people don't know, there was a bombing of a Mississippi synagogue. And this was a place that the Klan actually had bombed decades before. And, you know, what's so rich about this is that the guy who did it was actually a Christian. So a lot of people are claiming that this was, I mean, that was, okay, so pause. That was an anti-Semitic attack. There's no doubt that it was an anti-Semitic attack. He targeted it because it was a synagogue and he bombed it. He didn't protest a place that was illegally selling land, right? There's a huge difference. And even to connect those, I think is really dangerous and really like totally trivializes actual anti-Semitism and violence, right?
Absolutely. It absolutely trivializes actual anti-Semitism. Again, it's a distortion of what anti-Semitism is. It's a distortion of power. People who support the Palestinian right to resist, or people who protest in support of Palestinian human rights, are not engaging in anti-Semitism, full stop. And they do not have the power. This is how structural systems of violence work. You need to actually have power. These are the oppressed people do not have power, and people supporting the oppressed people in the United States, Palestinians and our allies, do not have the power to actually engage in the kind of anti-Semitic violence that we're talking about when we talk about white supremacy, when we talk about Nazi-inspired white supremacy, which is what this was, that fuels anti-Semitism. Right. The people who are being subjected to the violence on a mass scale, to structural violence, are Palestinians in the West Bank, who are being torn out of their homes, who are being beaten while they are tending to their olive groves, who are being massacred as they try to pass through checkpoints to get to their jobs every day, and Palestinians in New York and in the US and our allies who, when we attempt to protest these actions, are called anti-Semitic, are called terrorists, are called supporters of terrorism. Saying that, even saying that you support the Palestinian right to resist by any means, which is something that's enshrined in international law, right, and occupied people have the right to resist. Saying that right now is just putting a target on yourself. Right? Yeah. Because again, it completely obscures everything else, and it's the only thing that we focus on.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you brought that up, because people forget, and we're actually going to show a clip, because if you thought that was bad, if you thought the tweet was bad, and you thought Mamdani's statement was bad, wait till you see this next video that we're going to play, and I bet people can predict which New York City politician said something atrocious. Brad, do you have it? Do you want me to screen share, or can you upload it? I guess press number 1 if you want me to screen share it. Number 2 if you can upload it.
I can upload it, Katie.
Okay.
Is this different than A1? Is this different than that?
Yeah, it's a tweet from a certain politician.
Right. So do you want to show?
You want to show the tweet? The tweet.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Just give me like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And by the way, I said it was bombed, the synagogue in Mississippi. It was actually it was attacked through arson, and people are claiming this was anti-Semitic. The guy, literally, we'll get into this a little bit later, but the guy is like a white Christian nationalist and has a Christian fitness website, which sounds crazy. I don't even, no, I won't say that. I don't want to offend people, but I thought of a bunch of interesting different Christian exercises. Okay, so let's take a look at what this politician said. Okay, we know him and love him. None other than Ritchie Torres. Activists protested outside a synagogue, chanting, "Say it loud, say it clear. We support Hamas here." Whatever the amnesia surrounding 10/7, the truth must never be forgotten. Hamas murdered, maimed, mutilated, raped, and tortured thousands of innocent Israelis. It is, and has always been, a barbaric oppressor of its own people. Support for Hamas is not an expression of empathy for Palestinians. It is an expression of antipathy towards Jews and Israelis. Hate has no place in New York City. So as you just pointed out, and this gets obscured all the time, like, there is a right to resist, and there is a difference between killing combatants and civilians. Mm-hmm. But there is an enshrined in that international law right to fight your occupier. But because the media was so complicit in this narrative that October 7th was a mass rape campaign, that's why it's so important to say that, because then something that is actually the right to resist gets turned into like this sadistic, sexually violent pogrom.
Totally. And those allegations of rape have been debunked. And of course, nobody cares, because
no one cares. Yeah.
It is a narrative that serves the ruling class, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, it's the 40 beheaded babies, it's the rape, it's the playing with someone's breath. I mean, all these things that are, no one believes them, or it's things that were done by, I mean, with the rape case, it really is a case of what is it? Every accusation.
Every accusation is a confession.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
You know, I'm sure you saw the interview with the Israeli woman who was held in Gaza for 52 days. She was on Democracy Now! A couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Who said, you know, she was with two separate people, a family first, and then two Hamas militants, and they treated her very well. They kept her safe until the Israelis decided that her life mattered more than their genocide.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Right. They were, or her life mattered less than their genocide, right? Because they were willing.
Well, until they decided that but obviously it didn't.
Okay.
that was never the reason that they
I see what you're saying. Okay.
agreed to a ceasefire anyways. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And you have so many people who said that they felt safer with Hamas than they did, safer from Hamas than they did from the Israeli bombings.
Mm-hmm, of course.
Right? So,
of course.
But again, like we say that we sound, anyone who doesn't already listen to alternative media will think that we're crazy conspiracy theorists, which is why 100%. I always come with the receipts. And I know this is problematic, but I'm always like, haaretz, like whatever, why this Israeli outlet, you know, it's not just like me or PAL-Awda or Democracy Now! Even, right? Like, I think it's useful. The problem is if those places don't report on it, then what? But whatever. I'm just speaking strategically. Like I try to get the most mainstream as possible to show, you know,
even them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Even or the New York Times reports on it. But you know, the difference is that the New York Times reports on screamshot words, which is totally made up. Everyone reads it. It's in the subheadline is that it's about sexual violence. Whereas when they report on the State Teman torture center, it's like you had to go several paragraphs down to read about the fact that people had rods inserted into their rectums, and they didn't use the word rape or sexual violence in that.
Right,
it was just like a very kind of like clinical description. And this is all why they do it, right? Because they have to do this so that we lose focus of what actually happened on October 7th, but what was happening before October 7th and what has happened since October 7th. And so if you have this like...
Or what October 7th was about.
Yes, what October 7th.
Why it happened.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's just see. I do want to kind of go back to... Oh, actually, we have an update. Did you see this? That Kathy Hochul... Hold on, Brad, I didn't send this out yet because it just happened. So civil rights groups warn against New York Governor Hochul's anti-Palestinian buffer zone proposal to ban constitutionally protected protests. So are you caught up on this? Because it just happened.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what just happened? Because she had a press conference, right?
Yeah, so Kathy Hochul gave her State of the State address this afternoon, where she talked about many things. One of the things that she talked about in her policing section of her address was the fact that she is proposing a bill to create a 25-foot buffer around, she said, places of worship to prevent anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Now, this is just laughable as a Muslim and as a person who organizes in Muslim communities. The biggest threat to Muslim safety is U.S. empire and police.
Right.
But that's a side note. Obviously, this is and she talked specifically about the protests, and she talked, that happened last week, and she talked specifically about the chants and said nothing, again, like AOC, made it seem like protesters just marched to a random synagogue and shouted chants in support of Hamas. It's right. It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah. It is. It's really upsetting. And I think a lot of people predicted that this would happen, right? But it's not getting a lot of coverage. I mean, I had to go to, I saw it on CCR, the Center for Constitutional Rights,
right.
Put out a statement.
It's not getting a lot of coverage. It hasn't been passed yet. It's a thing that she's proposing. But notably, one of the second executive order that Mamdani signed upon taking office was an executive order that I think used the words like encouraged the NYPD to explore buffer zones.
Oh God.
So he's already expressed his support for this. Very unfortunately. And I think, again, this is a thing that New York State could stop today if it wanted to.
Right. So there was actually a debate on Twitter about this, right? And you, as a lawyer, I was very excited to ask you about this. Before we do that, let me just show the Center for Constitutional Rights, and they're an amazing organization. And so they wrote, civil rights groups warn against New York Governor Hochul's anti-Palestinian buffer zone proposal to ban constitutionally protected protests. Discriminatory and unlawful sales of occupied Palestinian land cannot be insulated from scrutiny by being moved to religious spaces. And that's actually a really great way that they're putting it, right? They're saying that they're the ones who are moving it. So today, during her State of the State address, Kathy Hochul announced a proposal to ban demonstrations within 25 feet of religious institutions. This comes as pro-Israel groups and lawmakers are attempting to shut down protests against the discriminatory and unlawful sale of Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank by conducting those sales in houses of worship. Governor Hochul's proposed ban poses a serious threat to New Yorkers' First Amendment rights and sends a dangerous message that silences dissent. Palestine Legal and the Center for Constitutional Rights have issued this joint statement strongly condemning the proposal. And recent attempts by private litigants and the Trump administration to weaponize the FACE Act, a federal law designed to protect access to places of worship and reproductive health clinics, to suppress criticism of Israel, are a part of a broader right-wing program of silencing political dissent and advocacy for Palestinian rights. So what are your thoughts on this also as a lawyer?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say PAL-Awda has a statement on this that we're going to publish soon, hopefully by the end of the day. So people should keep an eye out on that. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or X, Facebook. I think it's an excellent statement. Again, this is low-hanging fruit, like the legal organizations are saying that this is a clearly discriminatory proposal. It is, again, she threw mosques in there. She threw Islamophobia in there. They don't care about Muslims, despite the fact that they want to light, whatever, City Hall or wherever green in January, that's exactly what's happening. That they are telling these Zionists and that if they want to insulate themselves from exposure to the law, all they have to do is have these events inside of a synagogue. And if I want to talk a little bit about the FACE Act, because it's actually, so the FACE Act is a federal law that was passed, I believe, in the 60s, explicitly to protect people and doctors going to abortion clinics, because doctors who were offering abortions, working at abortion clinics, were being targeted, threatened, and then killed. And so the FACE Act was passed to make it illegal for anyone to threaten or harass people who were trying to access abortion clinics. Right. Now, right before it was passed, someone proposed that they throw in there a subsection about places of worship. And that subsection has never been used to prosecute people before. It's being used now. The FACE Act has only historically been used to prosecute people who are threatening or harassing people accessing abortion clinics. Right. Now, Zionist lawfare organizations have used it to sue groups protesting land sales at synagogues. So that we saw it first being used in LA last summer when PYM Code Pink had a protest of a land sale in front of a synagogue. And then they were sued by all of these Zionist organizations under the FACE Act, alleging that they're threatening and harassing people and prohibiting them from entering the synagogues on the basis of the fact that it was a synagogue. So they're trying to prevent them from accessing their places of worship or engaging in religious practice. And that case is still ongoing. Most recently, we saw the Department of Justice, for the first time, instead of private actors, the Department of Justice, so Trump, the Civil Rights Division, sued several organizations for a land sale protest that happened in New Jersey, including a member of PAL-Awda, and actually an elderly Jewish woman, who the only allegation against her is that she served a cease and desist letter to the host of the sale, who was a Jewish man who said that he prayed in his home, and so by her coming to his home to serve the cease and desist letter, which she's obligated to do because you have to personally serve someone, that was a threat against him because of his Jewishness. It doesn't get more absurd than this.
Right.
And, we're just seeing the Zionists and the federal government going to extreme lengths to attempt to suppress the movement and to attempt to paint all of this as anti-Semitism and to completely obscure the reality. And, they are aiding and abetting in this, as the US government does.
That's so crazy. I know that we wanted to get to more things, but honestly, like more campaigns, but we've been you've been providing so much really helpful information. I know you're also exhausted from travel. What do you want to, in like the last few minutes? Well, I actually want to share something, but just because I think it's just so rich, because talking about the way that things that are not anti-Semitism are presented as anti-Semitism, I just want to show this one tweet, which is just disgusting. So here is Deborah Lipstadt, who is she's worked in the Biden administration, ambassador, ambassador, U.S. Special Anti-Semitism Envoy, professor at Emory, sued by David Irving, film Denial with Rachel White, author Anti-Semitism Here and Now. Okay, so she's supposed to be like a real expert on anti-Semitism, right? Ostensibly. So
Whoops-a-daisy. I think that Katie accidentally hit the wrong button.
That's what happened to me.
Sorry. Sorry to leave you alone with Deborah. Okay, I'm back. This is what she had to say about the arson attack against that Mississippi synagogue. 1 second. Let me just move this. And again, this is just example number like 3,000 of how these people are consciously or unconsciously, but maybe very likely consciously, just totally trivializing actual anti-Semitism. So she responded to this arson attack on a synagogue. This is a major tragedy, but it's more than that. It's an arson attack and another step in the globalization of the Intifada. Okay, this woman is claiming that this is the globalization of the Intifada. And just to give you guys a sense of the person who's responsible for this arson, I'll let you decide if you think that this is someone who would ever talk about globalizing the Intifada or not. 1 second. Let me just give you a little bit of a sense of this person. Sorry. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Let me just tell you about this guy. Here's an article in the forward, understanding, understanding the Mississippi synagogue arson suspect has a Christian fitness site. Here's what that tells us. The alleged arsonist Christian influence fitness program reveals what ideas may have influenced him. And it talks about his Christian fitness site, how he also has things like it's called One Purpose, and it advertises scripture-backed fitness. I'm not sure what that would even look like. Refers to its users as brothers who are building their temple. Women were not mentioned and presumably not the target audience. Instead, it pairs a veneer of biblical truth and Christianity with rhetoric about masculinity. It modeled its fitness program after the biblical patriarchs. listing some of the oldest men in the Bible, Adam, Methuselah, Noah, and others with their Hebrew names. So this is probably, and then a post on Pittman's Instagram about a Christian diet / testosterone optimization advises eating only raw milk and eggs, as well as limiting oneself to God-made fats. And they're like obsessed with the fact that some Hebrew is used, which is kind of ironic because this guy's an anti-Semite using Hebrew. But obviously, this is not someone who I don't think is someone who you were going to run into at a PAL-Awda meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Certainly not. And like I said, we're an organization that, we're Palestinian-led, but many of our members and people in our leadership are Jewish. And this is a person, anti-Semitism is white supremacy. And we are an anti-imperialist, anti-racist organization, and we understand we understand very deeply and very well the connections between white supremacy and Zionism.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just so rich that their blindness and dishonesty. And this woman, Deborah, still has that tweet up. Like, it's been hours.
It's absolute dishonesty, and even when it's afactual, again, they don't care. Like the words, screams without words, debunked, still on the New York Times website, has not been retracted, and it won't be retracted because media is controlled by what serves the interests of the ruling class, not what's actually true.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to mention? And again, I so appreciate your time coming onto the show. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I would just ask people to, follow us, stay up to date with our campaign. We have another campaign that's targeting a weapons manufacturer or a company that manufactures components of some of the most destructive missiles and fighter jets that are being sold by the U.S. to Israel. Again, another thing that could be stopped by Mayor Mamdani, by the Attorney General, by Governor Hochul, by this Not on Our Dime bill, and all of them are choosing to ignore it and focus on a made up anti-Semitism in this case.
Right. And if people want to protect people from people want to protect synagogues from being weaponized this way, they should just stop these land sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people should tell their synagogues, we don't want land sales in our synagogues.
Yeah.
Or New York politicians should actually uphold the law.
Exactly, right. Oh, one final question for you. What is the connection? Because you guys have statements against what's happening in Venezuela, the U.S. imperialism against Venezuela, against Iran, what happened with Renee Good, the killing of Renee Good. Can you just thread the needle and explain why these things are all connected?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the U.S.'s interest in Venezuela is an imperialist one. The U.S. kidnapping President Maduro was in an effort to, after decades of sanctions that failed to cripple the Venezuelan revolution, the Cuban revolution. It was just an effort to control the region and its resources, and to thwart the revolutionary spirit of the Venezuelan people. And we see the Zionist project as an arm of U.S. imperialism. Israel exists in the Arab world because the U.S. wants it to, and because it is beneficial to the U.S. in its quest for global, to maintain its hegemonic power and to control the world's resources. And similarly, ICE is a violent police force that, again, also exists to maintain and protect U.S. empire. And this, it's a class issue, of course. The idea is that we want migrants who come into the U.S. to be as vulnerable as possible so we can exploit them as much as possible. And And obviously, we understand that the root causes of migration are U.S. foreign policy, neoliberal economic restructuring, and imperialism. And all of these things are connected. U.S. imperialism is the cause of the most human suffering and destruction in our lifetimes, and has been for many lifetimes before.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Leena. And thank you for coming on, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, for us too. Bye. Have a great night. Okay, that was Leena. That was amazing from PAL-Awda, Leena Widdi. And I forgot we'll have to have her back on, because I always like asking my guests about like their own personal story and what happened to her family. Because as I mentioned in her bio, she's the daughter of Palestinian exiles, the Palestinians living in exile. So we are going to bring on our next guest, Camila Escalante, and we're going to be talking, how can we donate to PAL-Awda? I guess just go look at the website, PAL-Awda, and if you can't find it, I'll get in touch with her. We are going to be bringing on Camila Escalante, but we're going to be taking a very 1 minute break between now and Camila. And that will be actually teasing our final guest, or our third guest, Anthony Aguilar. So while we get ready to bring on Camila, and everyone like the stream if you haven't already, everyone give it a thumbs up. We're going to show this video of Anthony Aguilar, our third guest, the whistleblower, former Green Beret, and he gives a really moving speech. And this was actually from October, but as you'll see when you watch it, I mean, it's so applicable to what just happened in Minneapolis and what is happening with ICE and the killing of Renee Good, but the killing of so many other people. So check out this video. We will be joined by Camila Escalante right after this. And then after our chat with Camila, we will be joined by Anthony. So Brad, I'm just going to don't show me, just show this video.
Look at what's happening every day. I've been there. I have trained with them. I have been to Israel, where ICE agents and DEA agents and other three-letter agencies train with the Israelis, with the gendarmerie and the Israeli police force, training with them. And they bring those tactics back here. The oppression that we export, we bring it right back here. Look around. We are the ones suffering. Children in Gaza are suffering. Fathers, mothers, families are suffering. Every day on TV, we see a Palestinian father carrying their dead child. And little Marco and Ambassador Huckabee and our president make jokes and celebrate. A ceasefire? What a joke. The ceasefire wasn't even in effect for 30 seconds before Israel dropped another bomb. And what did they say? We can get away with it. Wake up, people. Every day we pay Israel our tax dollars so they can continue to bomb and kill unarmed civilians. We bomb boats off the coast of Venezuela. We blow up Colombians in fishing boats and say, oops. If you don't think that won't come to your neighborhood, think again. I have seen it. It is coming. ICE agents train in Israel, and they bring that back here, and they bring the same tactics. You don't have to read the secret files to see what's happening on our streets every day. For all you that serve your country, all of us that have served our country, for those of you out here in uniform serving your country, if you're a YouTube influencer, Israel will pay you $7,000 per post. You know who they pay that with? Our tax dollars. Our government makes us stupid, and we should not put up with it.
And that is Anthony Aguilar, who will be our third guest after we speak to Camila Escalante. So we are going to just keep the show going. And if you haven't already liked the stream, please do like it. Very important way to fight back against the algorithmic suppression. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe. Press subscribe and then the bell. And then, of course, if you can become Patreon supporters, that would be great. Patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And if you can do a $5 a month, that's great. If you can't do that, you can just still make the show happen by becoming a supporter at the $1 a month level. So we are going to bring on journalist Camila Escalante. She is a journalist who does a lot of reporting from South America. Interestingly enough, she was supposed to be, she was in Venezuela a month ago, and she was supposed to go back there, but she wasn't able to, thanks to U.S. foreign policy, which we will get into in 1 second. And she's also, you've seen her on the show before. She's great. And she co-founded and is editor of Concepcion News, an outlet which provides on-the-ground reporting from around Latin America. So welcome back to the show, Camila.
Hi, thanks for having me. Good to be with you guys again.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. So excited to talk to you. You have so much really valuable insight and information. Before we jump into what's happening in Venezuela right now, you were there a month ago and you were supposed to return, but explain to us why you weren't able to return and what you observed when you were there.
Right. Well, I was invited to observe the elections of the communal councils, or the communes. They were actually not the communal councils, but the communal projects. They were voting on projects to receive funding from the state. And the communes are usually communities or a set of different small business owners, people from, a particular neighborhood in a town that have, it could be a neighborhood, but it could also be, like I said, different entrepreneurs or small business owners that are trying to put forth some sort of initiative, and they're seeking state funding. And it could be a range of different things, but anyways, maybe we can talk about it later. But so they were holding elections to vote on communal projects. And so I went to go observe that process, and I observed a couple of them in different states. And so then Venezuela was set to have, and Caracas was set to host this really large peace conference that was supposed to have representation from all over the world. And they did, however, with far less participants than they had hoped for. And that's because the United States began through its, air regulatory agency putting out some warnings saying that, that Venezuela was, a risky place to be flying over, and urging these commercial airlines to not operate. And so what happened is we began to see these airlines scaling back on their commercial flight services. And eventually they just stopped altogether because it just became a safety hazard. And this is within the context of the extrajudicial killings that were taking place in the Caribbean Sea and in the Eastern Pacific on boats that the United States claimed were narco boats, that they were carrying drug shipments to the U.S., not necessarily from Venezuela. The origins of these boats was not necessarily stated. In fact, the United States till this day hasn't said who was on those boats and what they were accused of and what sort of criminal organization they were tied to or anything like that. So these terrorist strikes were taking place in the sea, and these airlines didn't want to fly because they thought that the United States was going to carry out a land attack on Venezuela. And so they suspended their flights, some of them temporarily, others indefinitely. And I wasn't able to return to that peace congress. And so it's been really difficult because on the one hand, not only is Venezuela the subject of unilateral coercive measures and economic war, which makes it very difficult for some businesses to operate in Venezuela. It makes it difficult for Venezuela's government to buy things and to be able to import things. And that affects flights. But now the United States has also tried to carry out or impose this air blockade, making it difficult for regular people to just go and buy a ticket from an airline to be able to fly out of the country, or even for airlines to be able to fly over Venezuela and use Venezuelan airspace, because essentially Trump said through his Truth Social post around November 30th that airspace was closed. And that's really not how the world is supposed to work. Like that just a president of a foreign country can just say that a different country in another part of the world is now closed. But that's essentially what happened. And so I wasn't able to return. And so, this is a situation where there's a foreign power that's trying to impose an air blockade, a naval blockade, and trying to make it very difficult for for Venezuelans to travel. But also now the United States began its seizure of oil tankers that were shipping oil to Cuba, but probably other destinations as well, saying that this oil belongs to the United States, that, it's not authorized. They're claiming that they have control over this and that it's in violation of sanctions. And so essentially the most important component of the Venezuelan economy, its oil, is now sanctioned and not allowed to be sold on the international market, which is a huge crime. So in addition to the previous years, the last decade plus of economic warfare against Venezuela, now they're just going to be seizing oil. They're seizing entire vessels, and they've seized other things as well. Of course, they seized an entire company, Citgo. The UK seized Venezuelan gold, and they've downed planes as well, and kept the air crew as hostages. So that's kind of the situation with that.
And sorry about that. I mean, it's terrible for you, also just terrible for the world. Wanted to ask you if you wanted to just also share what is happening now in Venezuela. When we were talking earlier about what we were going to talk about, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about the analysis that's coming from within Venezuela as opposed to the speculation from outside of Venezuela. So what is the analysis coming from within Venezuela that you think is important and that the media is not talking about here?
Right. Well, so I see, these are the kind of things that these are like hour-long analysis shows where they have really good programs. So there's really good programs with different scholars and different Venezuelan analysts who we hear from in Spanish. And, what I do with Causacha News is we cut a bunch of clips of things that happen in Spanish and Latin America, and we translate it. But it would be a lot of work to get this done and to make sure that it's done really well. But so I wanted to, describe some of the discussions that were being had, that run parallel to the discussions that we have, that we see on X, that some of the streamers have and things like that. And I was listening to this discussion on VTV, Canal 8, which is the state news channel of Venezuela, by a professor called Celio Sanchez Serpa. He's a lawyer, and another one named Alex Diaz Padron. They're both professors of legal studies. And they were talking about, this sort of argument. Venezuela's position is that international law exists for a reason.
Wow, that's crazy. So, what a crazy idea.
Yeah. So what this is responding to is kind of like some of these discussions that are being had on X or in the context of the Gaza genocide, which is that international law no longer exists, and then it is kind of a free-for-all. Well, what these professors are saying is that we're in a situation where international law was created many decades ago for a reason. It's a system through which countries have regulations and a framework through which they can resolve conflicts, to not have to escalate through war. It's supposed to be a mechanism through which you can, go through the different bodies, including the UN Security Council, to be able to resolve issues and prevent things such as a genocide. And so these are some of the purposes of this system. But now we're at a time where a minority of states, which is the United States and its European allies, you could say, Canada, and of course the Israeli Zionist entity, now they are waging an assault on that system, and they're violating international laws. And this is a real system to the test of international laws. And, what they're saying is that, we're returning to a system of relations between countries based on the use of force. And what the United States is steering us to is a system in which everything is going to be decided based on how much military might you have. And what the Zionist entity and the United States want us to do is to basically have us accept that as being the case. They want us to accept what they call the rules-based international order, which is something that's non-existent. It's not a real thing. There's no such thing as a rule-based international order. That's just, these law professors are saying. You can, where are you going to Google and find the set of regulations and laws that exist within this rules-based international order? It's a complete invention, but that they actually want to convince us that international law no longer exists. And that's the reason why they have withdrawn now through these different bodies, whatever it is, 61 of them in the last week, is because they want to be able to just strike whoever they want. They want to be able to surgically remove whatever president from whatever country they want. They can just, make up false designations, calling something a foreign terrorist organization, saying that a foreign leader leads this foreign terrorist organization, designating another organization which is actually completely made up and doesn't make sense, as in the case of Cartel de los Soles. And if the different, states of the world begin, or governments begin buying into this, then it just opens up the world for, the different genocides to come, and a system of, or a scenario of total war across the world. And so Venezuela is one of the countries that has been one of the most critical of the United Nations, of course. So has Nicaragua. These governments have been at the forefront of criticizing, in particular, the human rights, the UN human rights out of Geneva, which is the council through which they put out all of these false reports on human rights to try to weaponize the issue to use against these countries. And actually, they're bringing in people who advocate for regime change all the time. And so, of course, Venezuela believes that this is US, NATO, EU controlled UN, and that they exert far too much influence over the multilateral system, over this international system, and all of its courts and everything else. But at the same time, they believe that it's something that we need to, that we can't let go of, because they say that, they say that, this is the only way to avoid future Holocaust, and, to avoid just a situation where there's people in the world right now who believe that the only countries that deserve to exist are the ones who are powerful enough to exist. And if you listen to people like Alexander Dugin, who, I'm not endorsing this idea, but he has said that only the great empires, or the most powerful, military mights in the world, deserve to exist. And those countries are the United States, Russia, India, and China. And what does that mean for the rest of us? I don't know if you noticed, but none of those countries are in the Caribbean or Latin America. So we would just become the dominion of the United States. And so, we're looking at a situation where the United States is currently threatening Denmark, Canada, where I am now, Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, Iran, among many, many others. And so they're going to go forth and do whatever they're going to do. There are even analysts saying now that Iran can expect an attack from the United States in the coming weeks. And so when this January 3rd terrorist military attack took place in Venezuela, they called an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, even though it has been fruitless in stopping the genocide in Gaza and has not served its purpose in many ways. But it's when you have countries that don't have this as much of a powerful military and the economic power that countries like that the United States has, you really have to, try to go through a process of diplomacy. And that's the process through which Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president of Venezuela, says that they're going to go through to try to achieve the return of President Nicolas Maduro, who is a hostage of the United States, and to try to calm things down so that there aren't any future attacks. Because right now, it sounds like that's still on the table for the United States, a second attack on Venezuela.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so you've been watching these programs, and you also I've seen you in lots of different shows talking about what's happening in Venezuela. So how are you're not allowed to go into Venezuela right now. So how are you getting the information that you're getting? Like, who are you in touch with, or what are you reading?
Well, I, of course, have my outlet, Casualties News, and we have a correspondent. She's one of the main people who produces for Casualties News's pages, which is Camila Escalante. And she, from the early morning hours of January 3rd, had been sending me information. There were communicational outages. That is, the cell phone service was out, the internet was out, and the power was out, all at different times, depending on where you were in the areas of the attacks, which she lives in an area of one of the attacks. And but we've been receiving material from her every couple of days. It's very difficult when the internet is slow, and obviously she has to travel across the city to get to these marches and things. But we've been hearing from people on the streets. I have a lot of former colleagues, because of course I was based in Caracas previously, working for Telesur, and those are all Venezuelan colleagues, and they're still there, and many other people. There are some, I have some foreign journalist friends who are in Venezuela now, reporting for the different agencies, and so I'm always talking to these people, and so a lot of the information, besides those people that I get, is just trying to verify from Venezuelan state sources, just going to Venezuelan state media, going to the official communication channels of the different ministries and ministers and government officials, and of course the PSUV, the party, the ruling party, and that sort of information, because that's really all we have to go off of right now. We're seeing a huge flow of disinformation on social media, and in particular on X, but also in US corporate media. And they're claiming that they're receiving, information from unnamed sources in Washington, in the White House, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they say they have information from Caracas, but there's no way to verify that. I don't think anyone should. How could anyone ever consider that to be verifiable when they're only hearing it from US media? And obviously people have completely stopped consuming news from conventional media. A lot of young people don't get their information from conventional media, but they're getting it from social media. But Venezuela is the target of psychological warfare and fake news and a disinformation campaign that's been going on for at least 26 years. And this is no different. It's actually worse. And so we're seeing a lot of ideas being planted in the corporate media, but also through these different accounts on X primarily, where, you know, there are people like right-wing, you know, far-right Argentines who live in the United States or in Buenos Aires, but they're not in Venezuela. So where are they claiming to be getting this information from? And, you know, a lot of people are putting out information who are in no way defenders of Venezuelan sovereignty or the Bolivarian Revolution. So it shouldn't be taken seriously, but it seems to have effectively confused people. And so in Venezuela, we've heard from, you know, the leaders, the leader of the general secretary of the party, Diosdado Cabello, who's the interior minister, among many others, who have urged time and time again for people to not fall to the speculation, not fall to the rumors, and to have faith in, you know, in the leaders who are there, because the United States came in and they abducted two people out of a massive political party, out of a huge government. And we're talking about like a government that has like 35 ministers, by the way. That's the size of the cabinet. We're talking about all this entire leadership on every level. It's very profound. There's youth leadership. There are, you know, people who've been around for a very long time, even before Chavez came to power, who remain there. And so there's no reason to believe that things have radically changed as far as we're able to tell right now. So, you know, you're seeing some of this language on X where people refer to, they're trying to make this a thing, the remnants of the Maduro regime. They are actually saying that. And where did we hear that before? We heard that in Syria. They're trying to say that the remnants of the Maduro regime. No, it's the entire government is still there. Nobody has changed. We still have the same head of the armed forces, the same defense ministry, the same interior minister. The penitentiary system is run by the same people. Everything is the same. The only thing that changed is that, you know, the president and his wife, who is a lawyer and a member of the National Assembly, have been kidnapped and taken hostage by a foreign country. But, you know, things continue. And if you watch like the daily news, a lot of the things that normally happen have happened this week. Children returned to school. The semester commenced post-Christmas, New Year's, holidays. And Delcy Rodriguez, which it does feel a little bit weird, but she is inaugurating some of Nicolas Maduro's works, public works, public projects, opening new things, like a bridge that was built with the help of China was just inaugurated, and all sorts of things like that. So it's, you know, the leadership is really trying to put the people's speculation to rest and telling them to have faith in their government.
And you actually have a video that I wanted to show that you dubbed for us, right? Set up this video. Tell us what it is, and then we'll play it.
So like I said, we have Camila Escalante, who's our my colleague who reports from Caracas, and there were various targets of the January 3rd bombing and strikes and attacks on Venezuela. Some of them were in the state of La Guaira, which is a coastal state, and so this youth talks about, you know, he's from there. So this is a march. This march was on. So they've been having daily mobilizations calling for the return of President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. And this was the one that was on Friday, which they called the March of Social Movements, because every day the marches have had different themes or different groups. Today was transport sector. There was another one that was the Women's March, and so forth. And so this was the Social Movement March on Friday. And so he's just explaining a little bit about I think what he experienced and what happened there in La Guaira.
Great. And while we do that, Camila, I am going to have you change your audio because despite a lot of that stuff that we did before, there's like a bit of scratchiness. So I think we decided, Brad, right, that it's better to just have her use the built-in microphone. And I'm going to text you and Andrew. That way, if you have any issues with reconnecting, you won't have them anymore, hopefully. So I'm going to connect you. Why does your name never show up? Andrew, I gave you Camila's number. Can you just text her so she has it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I thought you'd go like that, but that's good. We need to see Andrew. That's good. Okay, so we're gonna watch this video, and you will we will reunite with you after that. That sound okay?
Sure.
Okay, great.
The socialist youth of La Guaira State and all the youth of the world have come to march here in the streets of Caracas to tell the world that in Venezuela we do not want a foreign government. We want a government that is with the people, that is alongside the people, and that is for the people. And that is why on the past June 28th, we elected our president, Nicolas Maduro, and our deputy, Celia Flores, who is a deputy of the National Assembly, who was elected a few months ago and who was kidnapped by the North American Empire that only wants the wealth of Venezuela, because he himself said in statements that he does not come here for each and every Venezuelan. No, but rather he wants the wealth, the oil, the gold, and each of the minerals found here in Venezuela. And that is why today we say from the streets of Caracas, the youth, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, and all the youth of the Venezuelan people, the combative people that we have come to march in Caracas, to show the world that in Venezuela there is a president, and the only president of Venezuela is named Nicolas Maduro. We have an acting president, Delcy Rodriguez Gomez, who is the acting president and also our vice president. We want to tell Donald Trump that they will not succeed with Venezuela, because Venezuela is a country of peace, a country of love, a country of prosperity. We want our only president, who is Nicolas Maduro Moros.
Knowing that you are from La Guaira, and La Guaira was one of the places directly on the receiving end of this aggression, how do you feel as a resident from that state?
We feel grief because quite a few innocent civilians died there. We don't know if they are from the Venezuelan opposition or if they are from Chavismo, and quite a few innocent lives died there. Our Casa Guipuzcoana was affected. It was set on fire and the port of La Guaira was further bombed, where we had all the medicines safeguarded for oncology patients. And that was completely blown up. No medicine or anything was left for us to be able to care for our oncology patients. And today, Governor Jose Alejandro Terán highlighted that we are going to make some agreements with China so we can replace those medicines we had for our oncology patients to continue providing that care in the coming months. When they bombed us on the 3rd, that same day we had planned to distribute medicines for oncology patients, and we found out we were not going to be able to distribute the medicine because the place where we had our medicines safeguarded was bombed. The Katia Lamar Parish and an urban development were also bombed, and quite a few innocent people died there. A woman died. 3 girls died who couldn't get out because rubble fell on them, and with the fright they panicked.
Okay, so we'll bring back Camila. Thank you for that video. Yeah, that's, just hearing that voice is so important. We don't hear any voices like that in Western media, like none whatsoever. And also, it's so important to talk about the casualties and the civilian casualties, especially because, again, that's something that we don't hear about at all. Like, if this were an attack that was committed by Russia, imagine all the discussion justifiably that would be given to the civilian casualties on the Ukraine side.
Right. Well,
we did hear today an update on the number of people killed. So 108 people were killed at least between civilians and military, and 150 were wounded. And of course, in addition to all the infrastructure destruction and all of that, it is we haven't heard the details of everything, right? So there's been a lot of demand on social media, obviously, with all the speculating. People want information faster than it can be given out. But the fact is that the Venezuelan government has probably an interest in making sure that the information that comes out is released in a certain way. They don't need, a country that's trying to attack them and potentially coming in for a second attack to know, what precisely was damaged, what their weaknesses were, and everything like that. And, they're still in a process of investigation. Anytime something like this has happened in the past, because remember, this country has been subject to different infrastructure sabotage, different attacks. There was the drone attack on President Nicolas Maduro in August 2018, obviously unsuccessful, but which caused a bit of a scare. They have released, some pretty, a lot of information on it, but afterwards, this was not information that was like breaking news where they're, going on TV and listing all of these data points and things like that. Sometimes it has taken weeks to hear, the full story. And I expect that we'll hear more. So our main source for this, besides speaking to people the way Michaela was, is Madeline Garcia, who is the correspondent for Telesur, and she's had a lot of exclusive access to cover these different sites that were the target of attacks. So one of the sites was this scientific and academic center in Miranda State, which is part of the National University's, it's part of the Venezuelan Institute of Scientific Research. And so 2 missiles directly hit the area. And then of course the one that I've posted a lot about on X has been the strike on this medical supplies distribution centers warehouses, which had the dialysis treatments, which serviced 9,000 kidney patients, for which the Venezuelan government had to go. They had to organize their emergency contingency plans and receive some shipments in record time to be able to replace that those destroyed supplies and equipment. And some of these supplies now are purchased, others are being donated by the government of Brazil, which has pledged some number of supplies, equipment, and also medical personnel to come treat kidney patients. But like this young man said in the interview, it did hit a number of residences, at least in La Guaira, but also there were impacts to residential buildings in Fuerte Tiuna, which is where Michaela lives, our Causachun colleague. And so, people were really frightened in the middle of the night, that night when the strikes took place. They didn't know what was going on. People were asleep. They were running out of their buildings because they didn't know if the buildings were going to collapse or what. There were babies crying. And then there was power outages. It was totally dark in some areas. And then there were communicational outages, so people couldn't call to see how their families were. The only thing they could do is speak to one another and look into the sky.
Wow. Camila, this is really important information, really disturbing. And again, it's something that we never get a sense of. Can you talk to us about the impact that the sanctions have had on the people of Venezuela? And also, you said something really interesting in a recent interview about how this attack has actually kind of united support around the world for Venezuela. Can you talk about both of those things? Also, I have to do something for my dog, so I'm going to remove myself, but I will listen to what you're saying. I just won't be on the screen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the sanctions had a really huge impact because, of course, the different countries participate in trade with Venezuela. But when these sanctions were imposed, starting with the imposition of the unilateral coercive measures by Barack Obama, a lot of the different companies that were operating in Venezuela decided to close operations altogether. We saw the suspension of certain services that once existed there. And then these sanctions, which were purportedly targeted against the Bolivarian government officials, the reality was that they made it impossible for the government to go and purchase things to import, like food, like hygiene supplies, like medicines, like these sorts of medical equipment. In fact, even this last week, when Venezuela had to go purchase new supplies for the dialysis treatment, they probably had to do so through third parties. It's possible because they've had to use third parties for all sorts of things because the country was essentially blacklisted from the international banking system. It was extremely difficult for Venezuela to purchase a lot of these different things. So they had to rely really heavily on their close allies, which at the time, still now, are, China, Russia, some neighboring Latin American countries, Iran and Turkey primarily. And so what we saw was the loss of a lot of regular products from the shelves. That was something that really impacted people. They were having a difficult time buying things like replacement to fix their spare parts to replace their vehicles, so people weren't able to drive, and it had a huge impact on the country's oil sector because the refineries needed to be updated. They were not functioning at full capacity and all sorts of other things like that. And so, everybody knows that Venezuela lived through that period of hyperinflation. Their money became sort of useless. But it did allow some businesses to look for alternatives, which is that in some cases, I can't speak for all around the country, but in Caracas, we did see some businesses begin to use and accept cryptocurrency, even before countries like El Salvador. And so all sorts of different things had to happen during that period because things became really difficult. But one of the tweets that I wanted to share with you guys, but I didn't think to at the time because it's not a video, it's just a tweet, which is the one, that shows this report from CEPAL that shows that Venezuela
You send it to me. We can put it on the screen if you send it.
Sure. That shows that Venezuela has the highest growth in all of Latin America for 2025 and is projected to also lead growth in 2026. Let me just scroll to it. That's pretty recent. Let's see. Okay. So Venezuela leads Latin America in economic growth in 2025. Sending it to you.
Great.
So, and it's projected to also lead in 2026. And of course, that's, it's something that's going to plateau at some point, but we've seen huge economic recovery. There's a lot of people who have been returning to Venezuela in recent years, some of them just on their own buying tickets, others through this repatriation program initiative by President Nicolas Maduro, the Return to the Homeland plan, where he's actually, or Venezuela has actually, chartered flights from different countries, primarily countries with large populations of Venezuelan migrants, like Peru, like Ecuador, maybe Chile, countries of South America primarily, and the government's been bringing them back. And these are all people who voluntarily want to return to the country. Of course, a lot of people were coerced into leaving. A lot of people felt like they really had to leave because they didn't have very good economic prospects with how grave the situation was in Venezuela during those years. But they've seen improvement. They've been hearing improvement from their friends and families who remained in Venezuela. And so people have been returning, and things are really quite normal there. I think if anyone who was there, maybe 6 years ago, who were to return today, I think they would say that things have really noticeably improved in every way possible. I mean, it's funny because when things were really bad, we heard some of these opposition people go online, and even, when you see them in the US or wherever they are, talk about how Venezuela doesn't even have, like, they always say things like that Venezuela doesn't even have Starbucks, like it doesn't even have, like, all the menu items at McDonald's. Like, these are the things that they think are the indicators of a normal, successful, prosperous society. And it's true that it was very difficult for these sorts of companies to operate in Venezuela. But now the majority of those are there. Makeup companies, buy all, like, the regular, like, Maybelline, CoverGirl, whatever, just in any pharmacy and stuff like that. So, but things have really improved for average people. And I was there during the holidays. And so, people are stocking up on all sorts of different ingredients and things to be able to host and to be able to gather family and friends and have, like, big feasts and give presents and things like that. And this is just not what we hear from, Venezuelans who are in North America, for example. But we have to remember that the reason why you're going to see a certain set of Venezuelans on the exterior is because this is a country where a socialist project is being unfolded, at least, under a presidency and under a government that wants to, over time, move towards a more socialistic model. And so the people who, want to be a part of that are the people who are staying. They're staying there, and they're weathering all of the economic hardship that took place. They're weathering, the psychological warfare, the disinfo campaigns, and the xenophobia that has really singled out the Venezuelan people. I heard when Diego Sequeira was on the other day when you invited me on, but I was about to go to bed. And he talks about the dehumanization of Venezuelans. And there has been dehumanization of Venezuelans in the United States, in Venezuela, but also the migrants who have lived in all sorts of different countries. And so that has been a really disgusting campaign that wouldn't be accepted for most people, and it has lasted for a very long time. And so, the people of Venezuela have weathered all that. But, if you're a socialist right now and you're a Venezuelan, it makes sense for you to be in your homeland, and, trying to build that, trying to contribute to local projects. The people who are going to be in the United States right now, like, those are people who are looking for a certain type of lifestyle. They have a certain, idea of how they want to live. And so, of course, of course, you're going to get a very specific set of people there. And these are sort of the these people are the ones who are oftentimes given a voice in the mainstream media and who you bump into on the streets. And when people try to convince you to listen to Venezuelans, well, if we're going to listen to Venezuelans, at the very least, we should listen to the ones in the country, not the ones who are whatever it is at Disneyland.
Right. Well, let's take a look at this poll that you tweeted out and uploaded. Okay, let's take a look at this. Sorry. Okay, Venezuela leads Latin America in economic growth in 2025. Behind these figures is the effort of millions of Venezuelan workers, business owners, farmers, fishermen, and community members united in unwavering determination to combat the imperialist economic blockade. And let me scroll down. Okay, so do you want me to scroll down or? Oops,
I just muted the window. So there's another, this is an entire study by the by CEPAL. I guess it's like in English, it might be ECLAC, but it's the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. And so these are official UN figures. And so this is just to say that the reason why the United States had to escalate militarily and, of course, increase its military presence all around the region, not just in the Caribbean, but in all the different countries where it has military bases, and imposed, these air and naval blockades, was because they failed in their economic war against Venezuela. They thought that they could make life so miserable in the country, so unbearable, and actually kill people through sanctions, which, according to this study by CEPER, the Center for Economic and Policy Research some years ago, said that this economic blockade on Venezuela is the reason for hundreds of thousands of deaths in the country. And, whether through malnutrition, whether through the depriving people of medicine and necessary medical treatments and things like that. But Venezuela was able to overcome that through various means, through things like increasing the national production of food and having achieved virtual food sovereignty. That they overcame that. And so things have been looking very positive there. And so for that reason, the United States had to find another way. The Venezuelan people have yet to overthrow the Bolivarian government. And Trump was like, that's it. Like, we've been trying for so long now, we just have to hit them with our military might.
Right. Well, this has been really excellent. And Camila, you have to come back on again because there's so much more that we have to talk about. And I got to ask you more about Maria Corina Machado because she is hilarious to me, unintentionally. But please do come back on again. And you have such great insights. And I want to have more stories and anecdotes from you, but also just more kind of analysis and updates. So always love talking to you.
Thanks for having me. And thank you guys as well for taking the time to deal with my technical issues.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm glad we kind of figured it out because this microphone I've been trying to use for a long time, but we had to unplug it because of static, but we'll try again next time.
Yeah, next time.
You have a good team.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Brad and Andrew. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say though before we bring on the next guest?
Nope. You can find our stuff on Calsacha News's X, or we have a new Instagram. Unfortunately, we had to start a new Instagram, but it's at Calsacha Media.
Okay, great. We'll put in all the links to that also. Okay. Have a great night. All right. We are bringing on our next guest, and we are so excited to be bringing him on. He's been on the show before, and whenever he speaks, people are incredibly inspired. His name is Anthony Aguilar. He's a retired United States Army lieutenant and special forces officer. He served for 25 years in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Jordan, He's also a whistleblower who exposed crimes he witnessed as a security contractor working with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So welcome back to the show, Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Katie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your patience. We were running behind because we had such great guests earlier on.
Yeah, great guests.
Oh, thank you. So let's see, we played this video of you where you really kind of made all these connections between so many of the forces of evil, so many of the kind of three-letter agencies, as you called them. You made this is from a speech that you gave in October, but what's fascinating is that, it sounds exactly like something that applies to the fatal shooting we just saw of Renee Good. And just to refresh everyone's memory, I'm just going to read some of the things that you said, which is, I've been to Israel where ICE agents and DEA agents and other three-letter agencies train with the Israelis, and they bring those tactics back here. The oppression that we export, we bring it right back here. Look around. We are the ones suffering. Children in Gaza are suffering. Fathers, mothers, families are suffering. We bomb boats off the coast of Venezuela. We blow up Colombians in fishing boats and say, oops. If you don't think that won't come to your neighborhood, think again. So can you elaborate on these connections and how it also relates to what we just saw in Minneapolis with the ICE killing of Renee Good?
Absolutely. And first, I've been in backstage listening to Leena and Camila, and great insights. I really learned a lot. So great guests, and thank you for everything they shared. The remarks that I gave back in October, that was in front of the U.S. State Department headquarters in Washington, D.C. And the premise of that was protesting that at the time, we were in the middle of a shutdown, and how our State Department and our departments within the executive branch are spending our hard-earned tax dollars as we struggle to make ends meet. We give billions to other governments. Case in point being with the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. And when I was in Israel, with the GHF, we went to one of the training bases, the National Urban Training Center, or the NUTC in Israel, which they call Little Gaza. And at this training center, on the gate out front, like if you were to go to a military base and it has the units that train there, it has the IDF emblem, it has the DEA, US DEA, US DHS, and ICE. It's a training center. And I wouldn't say that it shocked me, but it was interesting to me that not only do we have periodic training with Israel, it's a firm set thing. So soon after I returned, and I saw very, very similar tactics to what ICE agents were employing on the streets of our country, and what I saw in Gaza with members of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation security forces, which were trained and instructed by the IDF. The comparisons were just frightening. I mean, just too many similarities to be coincidence in the tactics employed, how the tactics are employed, the masking of faces, the refusal to provide medical aid to those in need, as we saw with Renee Good.
Exactly.
So I started to look into this in September, and sure enough, it didn't take me long. I just Googled Department of Homeland Security strategy, and I shared this in some previous appearances that I've had. But I encourage all of your guests to go just pull it up and look. It's not that long of a document. And in there, you'll see the Department of Homeland Security outlines at the cost of $169 billion. That's right, billion. The continuation of growing ICE to 10,000 field agents, which would make it the largest federal fielded agency in the country. But additional continued funding to the binational Industrial Research and Development Program. It's outlined in the DHS strategy. This specifically grants money to Israel to host and train three-letter agencies within the Department of Homeland Security: Border Patrol, ICE, DHS staff, training them in Palantir and data collection, not against a foreign enemy, not against a foreign threat, against us, US citizens. There's no doubt in what it's used against and what it's used for. So those statements that I made in October were not simply darts being thrown at a dartboard or wild, what I call wags, wild ass guesses. I've read it. I've seen it. The information is there. When you take Donald Trump's national security strategy, which he penned and signed on the 5th of December, 2025, another great document that, it's not very long at all. It's written in Trump style. It's only about 8 pages, very simple language. I'm sure the original draft was in crayon and then they had someone print it, but it lays it out very clear that the United States seeks dominance in the Western Hemisphere, not cooperation, not good neighbor policies and being diplomatic partners in the world stage. Dominance. It clearly outlines it in there. So when you look at how our agencies, ICE and the domestic front, train and the tactics that we're seeing employed around the world, I don't think that Donald Trump is necessarily pulling the strings anymore. The connections to me are too strong. Mielikowski comes to visit Mar-a-Lago right before the new year, stays through New Year's Eve, and on the 3rd, we're invading Venezuela. Soon after that meeting, there's another phone call.
Can you explain who Mielikowski is for people who don't know?
Apologies. So, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the name Netanyahu given this, more of a Jewish ancestry sounding name or a Semite sounding name, his name is Mielikowski. His family's from Poland. He grew up in New Jersey. His first job that he had out of college was with the Boston Consulting Group. You've heard that before. That's the group that drafted the plans in 2021 for what we're now seeing in Gaza with the $112 billion Project Sunrise that Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, presented, that the United States will fund with our tax dollars 20% of that budget. Roughly 24 billion of that will come out of our tax dollars. So all of these connections, the connection with the Prime Minister of Israel, the connection with our president, the phone calls that lead to action, the meetings that then lead to actions that seem so far out of left field. And if you look at what Donald Trump ran on, what he ran on to his base was ending endless wars, not intervening in other countries' affairs, focusing on America first and not being the world police. Yet here we are, more than ever. We've ramped that up to 11. And I don't think Donald Trump's pulling the strings. I think he is under full control of what Israel wants the United States to do.
And what is that in the case of Venezuela?
Well, I think in Venezuela, if you look at the oil resources and what frightens me in the oil resources off the coast of Venezuela, you'll hear some that want to make it look like this was some maneuver of freedom to free Venezuela from tyranny and to arrest the evil Maduro, and that they'll say, we don't need the oil. That's heavy black. We don't need it. We don't use it. We have plenty of our own. That's not what the oil executives who President Trump invited to the White House last week all stood up there and said. They said, we are ready. We're going in. We're going to extract. We're going to make billions. And they're not hiding it. It's about the oil. It's about the natural resources. And it's about continuing to fund Israel in the amount of money that we give to Israel every year in the tune of billions. That money's got to come somewhere. And we are in debt. Debt that we shouldn't be paying the lease on the Ferrari when we can't even afford our mortgage. So we got to find a way to make that money. Venezuela, easy target. I also think that in going after Venezuela in this way, Guyana is next to fall, just south of Venezuela, who has even more readily reserve oil right off the coast. And then you've got Colombia just to the north with natural resources, oil as well. And all of those are ripe for the picking to give the excuse of the war on drugs, narco-terrorism. So it's concerning to me that obviously this doesn't stop with Venezuela. We're going to go right up the Darien Gap, Colombia, into South America, or excuse me, into the southern part of North America. And additionally, I think it's to shore up resources for ourselves and for Israel for the collapse, or definitely a punch to the international oil market and reserves in going to war with Iran.
Wow. Okay. That's scary. I'm just curious, like, when did you start thinking this way? Was this something that you, thought about before, you went to Gaza? Is this something that you think now after Gaza?
Oh, it's something that I've always thought, but you know, you constantly question yourself. You know, I deployed to Iraq 4 times, height of the war, height of the sectarian violence, counterinsurgency, back again to fight ISIS. Never found any weapons of mass destruction. Syria, Afghanistan, always questioned, what are we doing here? So I've questioned these things for a long time, but what I saw in Israel, or in Gaza, in our relationship with Israel, changed my perception. It was a paradigm shift for me in terms of the United States of America is absolutely being told what to do by Israel. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, not a humanitarian foundation.
Right.
In fact, a front and cover for the CIA to conduct intelligence operations in Gaza under the guise of humanitarian aid. I don't say that out of conspiracy or speculation. The vice president of operations for Safe Reach Solutions, I won't say her name, but a senior agent, if you will, wrote that in her paper as a CIA operative while she was a fellow at Columbia University, writing that in the future, when the United States is no longer engaged in overt wars around the world, the best way to continue clandestine operations is to do it through the guise of humanitarian assistance and humanitarian aid. And that's exactly what the GHF is. It's what it was. So when I saw this operation and that the Israelis were absolutely directing us what to do, to the point to where turning a blind eye to the killing of children, turning a blind eye to the systematic and continued forceful displacement of non-combatant civilians and the forced design starvation of a population, it was clear to me that we are in deep and something is going on here. And that led me to want to look into this so much further. And as I said, the answers to the test, the clues to the puzzle aren't hidden in the library with Colonel Mustard. They're right in front of us. They are right in front of us. Any one of us, you can download right now. They're free. It costs you nothing to look at the National Security Strategy, to look at the National Defense Authorization Act. All of these things wrapped up under H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, or the OBBB, which outlines all of these things of how the United States is going to spend money. We're going to continue to fund Israel. We're going to continue to provide them bombs and munitions to continue the war. We're going to continue to support them in their wartime endeavors throughout the region. And we are now in the Western Hemisphere, we are seeking dominance. Let's not forget, we still have U.S. soldiers on the ground in Iraq, over 2,000. We still have U.S. soldiers on the ground in combat in northeast Syria. We still have soldiers on the ground in combat in the southern Philippines. We have soldiers deployed to Taiwan for the potential defense of Taiwan if China takes some kind of action. Now we have forces deployed to Puerto Rico for operations to continue in the global south, and we still have forces postured in Europe for whatever Russia may decide to do in expansions beyond Ukraine and its threats to NATO. And now we're talking about planning an invasion or some type of military action in Greenland. We are out of Schlitz.
And so what, yeah, this was something that surprised me when we were speaking, that you were saying that, you know, obviously you think that there's a big Israeli role in the invasion of Venezuela, or the decapitation of Maduro, the kidnapping, the attack. Also, obviously, big role in Iran. And then you even think that they are involved in what the United States is going to be doing in Greenland. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, I absolutely do, because when you think about actions for Greenland, Greenland is not just another territory, it is the territory of a NATO ally. Greenland is Denmark's Puerto Rico, if you will. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. If Cuba said, we're taking Puerto Rico because we should have it, that would be an act of war. Greenland is a territory of Denmark. Do we have bases there? Yes, we do. Do we have security agreements and do we have endeavors in Greenland? Of course we do. But it is a territory of Denmark. If we take military action to take it, we single-handedly, the United States, because really NATO has 3 pillars. Keep Russia out, keep Germany down, or preventing another Germany-like situation, not particularly Germany, but the rise of one singular power nation. Keep the Soviets, now the Russians, out, and keep America in. And in doing that, if America is out, we declare war against one of our own NATO allies, or start a war, I should say. That's the end of NATO. Who does that benefit? That doesn't benefit us. That doesn't benefit Europe. It does benefit Israel, because now, with the dissection of those NATO forces and the alignment of other forces in the region, if you recall, right after the incident with the bombing of Qatar against the Hamas negotiation team, quickly soon thereafter, Saudi Arabia went into a pact or a formal security agreement with Pakistan. Pakistan is a nuclear power, a heavily armed nuclear power. That offsets Israel's nuclear hegemon in the region to where now there's another nuclear player, and it's not Iran. So who does this benefit? It doesn't benefit the United States. The extraction of rare earth minerals and oil, primarily rare earth minerals in Greenland, will take us billions of dollars of investment and decades of development before we extract a single penny that will help our economy. So we've heard Trump say, well, if we don't take it, Russia or China will. I don't believe that to be true.
What do you think? What do you believe to be true?
So I look at the the tactics that the administration is playing, and he has surrogates that really pump this narrative. He's got J.D. Vance, who's been out there talking. He's got Steve Miller, who's been out there talking. And really, when you stop and listen to them, this is classic Hertz Hobbesian dilemma. What does that mean, right? That's a big word. Well, Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan, and then you've got Hertz, who is a German scholar. They wrote a dilemma in world security, harping on uncertainty and anxiety, and a kill first or perish mentality. This is that. If we don't do it first, they will, and therefore we will perish. The uncertainty and the anxiety leads us to then take actions that we normally wouldn't take under diplomatic relations, i.e. what we did in Venezuela, what we're preparing to do in Guyana and Colombia and potentially even Mexico. We've threatened Mexico, our land border partner, with land strikes. And now you look at Greenland. It's all part of that security dilemma mindset that if we don't do it, they will. The big they, the classic they, the Russians and the Chinese. Trump has said it over and over and over again. And within international laws and orders, international law and some semblance of security and balance in the world, to blame the preemptive actions of another country taking action onto another country's territory as a reason to take a preemptive military strike to take that territory from a NATO ally, it's absurd. You just heard me say it. It's absurd.
Wow. Yeah, this is a scary, fascinating analysis, but also incredibly scary. And I had a question. There's so many questions I have for you. So, but I'm going to go back to one, which is, as someone who served as a special forces operator for the U.S. Army, can you talk about the technical aspects of what goes into an operation like the one that we saw in Venezuela?
Sure. So if you look at previous military action in the Caribbean area. You know, we invaded Panama. We took out Noriega. We invaded Grenada. Very much the same. What we did, the action that we took in Venezuela, was not an invasion. By feel in the world, it was an invasion. We invaded sovereign land. But militarily, I'm talking about from a military, operational, and tactical perspective, this was a strategic raid. Operationally, it was a surgical strike. Tactically, it was a strategic raid. The same thing we learn in Ranger School, the same we learn in basic tactics. What's a raid? It's a planned objective with a planned withdrawal. We went in, we went out with our objective, which was the capture of Maduro. So when you look at how that was executed, I said this on some other outlets before, that we would be at war with Venezuela before Christmas. And if you look at the conditions that we set with the seizure of oil tankers, with the closure of the airspace, those are already actions of war. The January 3rd mission was simply the punch to that warm-up, which I saw coming. When you look at how the military was posturing forces in Puerto Rico, and you look at the movement of the USS Ronald Reagan into the Caribbean, the USS Gerald Ford, the most capable nuclear aircraft carrier in the world, the posturing of the U.S. Marine Corps' Special Purpose MAGTF, or Marine Air Ground Task Force, or Marine Amphibious Ground Task Force. These units aren't deployed and sent forward for threats. They're for action. So it was coming, and all of these parts were in play. And if you look at how the mission was conducted, so U.S. Army's 7th Special Forces Group, their area of responsibility is the South America, or the Southern AOR. So they were surely involved. We know already from the open source news and reporting, based on what Trump and Miller and J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth have said, that Delta Force was involved in it heavily. So when you talk about these actions that were conducted, Delta Force Special Operations have a very limited capacity in terms of operating at this level. They aren't a land army that can invade and take over a country like the 3rd Infantry Division did in Iraq in 2003. They have the ability to strike strategic targets and withdraw. And that's exactly what they did. Now, the problem is that you have the administration wanting to convince America that because the military operation was successful and showcased our military prestige and power, therefore the operation is justified. I say no. Both can be true. That yes, our military trained and executed this mission in a high manner of performance. They did it. They executed a military operation with prestige. That doesn't mean it was right. That doesn't mean that we should have done it. That doesn't mean that it makes what we did okay. And that's what the administration, I think, really kind of pounds the table on, to try to get that MAGA fervor, or that fervor behind America, to where, look, victory is good. We won. Look what we did. We went in 3 hours. We killed 80 people. We wiped everything out. We took their president. And before breakfast, he was back in New York in jail. And now you have this security guard, supposedly, that's come out, though no one's given a source or identified a primary source of this quote unquote security guard, in that U.S. forces came in and wiped everything out. We were like ghosts in the night. So there's this machismo and this look at how great we are. It doesn't mean that what we did is justified or right, nor that we should continue to do it.
Right, of course. And how much planning do you think has to go into this?
Immense amounts. When special forces and elite tier 1 units, like at the unclassified name of Delta, in their classified capacity and what they do, they don't just jump on a helicopter and fly and do things in the middle of the night. They have been training for this for months. Full-scale mock-ups of the presidential palace on the airbase, full-scale flight pass that I'm sure they've been practicing for months prior to actually flying the mission, down to imagine a premier NFL football team. Let's talk about maybe, I don't know, the best defense out there, and they practice every play till ad nauseum, till where every piece is perfect. That immense planning went into this, to include, which I will say it because President Trump and Hegseth and others have said it. There's articles written about it now, about the direct energy weapons and electronic control measure weapons that we employed on this mission, that this security guard characterized as, oh, we were all nauseous and we couldn't move and this and that. That, I believe that's true. That's how these directed energy weapons, or DEWs, and electronic countermeasures, to where we knock out enemy drones, and how we knocked out the frequencies for them to be able to fire their surface-to-air missile capabilities. Those are all things that we have the capability to do. We've been developing those things for years, but this is not the first time we've used it. But it's certainly a time that we used it in its most overt, here we are, check it out type of fashion, which tells me that there's even more scary weaponry on the shelf if we're now putting this out on the market.
Wow. Well, shifting back, although obviously this is all very connected, and we know about the imperial boomerang, and how, as you yourself said in that video that we played, the violence we export is imported right back home. So I want to show you a video of Trump. He's being asked whether or not deadly force was justified against Renee Good. Let's take a look at what he had to say in response to this.
Believe that deadly force was necessary after watching all the footage a few days have passed. What's your assessment there?
It was highly disrespectful of law enforcement. The woman and her friend were highly disrespectful of law enforcement. You saw that. They were harassing them, were following for days and for hours. And I think, frankly, they're professional agitators.
But just disrespect.
And I'd like to find out, and we are going to find out, who's paying for it.
But just disrespect.
With their brand new signs and all the different things. But these are professional agitators, and law enforcement should not be in a position where they have to put up with this stuff. What that woman and what her friend and what their other friends were doing to law enforcement, not just ICE, law enforcement, is outrageous.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on this? Okay, don't go anywhere, because we have our final guest, and I'm so excited that she can join us. Laura Jedeed is a freelance investigative journalist who has been published in Politico, The New Republic, New York Magazine, and Rolling Stone. She was deployed twice to Afghanistan and served in the 82nd Airborne Division. She's written in depth on the American conservative movement and far right, among other subjects, such as doing on-ground reporting the Portland Black Lives Matter protests. And she has a fascinating piece that I'm actually going to just let her describe it herself, because I don't think I'll be able to do it justice. So welcome, Laura.
Great to be here, Katie. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for joining. Thank you so much. And tell us about this story that you just published in Slate.
Yeah, so this was a weird one. The story was originally supposed to be, I was going to go to an ICE hiring event in Arlington, Texas in August. I had my real resume, as you mentioned, Katie. I was in the 82nd Airborne. I have some analyst experience in the civilian world. I did a skills-based resume, so completely factual. And, by not talking about necessarily what I've done for the last 7 years, it looks pretty plausible. So the plan was go to the ICE hiring event, turn in my resume, do the interview, and then write about what that was like. Pretty simple, right? So that's not how it went, because it turns out that I got a tentative job offer, which I missed because I wasn't looking for it, because I assumed they would Google me. You can see that my name is unusual, Laura Jedeed. There's really only one of me. I'm very much online. I'm very Googleable. You type my name into Google and you'll instantly see that I am very against the Trump administration. I'm very against ICE. I am very vocal about both of these things and have been for years. So I just assumed this would be the end. But they sent me a tentative job offer, which I missed. It had a bunch of paperwork on it that I needed to fill out to proceed with the hiring process. I needed to sign something that said I'd never been convicted of domestic violence, consent for background check, my driver's license information, stuff like that. Never sent any of it. About 3 weeks after that, I get an email from LabCorp saying ICE would like you to take a drug test. And I was like, well, that's odd, but sure, I'll waste their money. I live in New York City. Cannabis is legal there. I'd partake in about 6 days before the test, but okay, whatever. I'll waste ICE money. Fine, I'll do it. So I took it. And I waited to hear whether I had just failed or if there was a ambiguous enough result to continue. So about 9 days after I took that test, I logged onto the ICE hiring portal and was shocked to find, Katie, that not only did the drug test not seem to be a deal breaker, I appeared to have been offered a final job offer. The portal listed that I had accepted this job offer. My EOD date was September 30th. This was October 3rd. The background check was listed as completed as of October 6th, so 3 days in the future, kind of a Minority Report situation there. So the article ended up being about that.
And so what was the most shocking part of this job offer process? And what does it reveal about, for people who haven't read the article, which is a really fascinating read, but what is the relevance of your story and how does it relate to what we're seeing right now with ICE?
Yeah, so it's very funny that they almost hired a lefty journalist who's very outspoken about the Trump regime. That's funny. What's not funny is that unless this was a real freak accident, a real fluke situation, and I'm the only application this happened to, ICE doesn't know who's behind those masks carrying those guns in our cities. It could be anybody. How many people with domestic violence convictions are running around with guns right now? How many people with convictions of sexual violence are in charge of our detention centers? We don't know. They don't know. I mean, it's bad enough thinking about how they might be recruiting Proud Boys or J6ers or white supremacists, but the truth is they're taking anyone with a pulse. And in some ways, that's just as scary.
Yeah, I mean, so you write in the article, you say many of ICE's critics worry that the agency is hoovering up pro-Trump thugs, January 6th insurrectionists, white nationalists, etc., for a domestic security force loyal to the president. The truth, my experience suggests, is perhaps even scarier. ICE's recruitment push is so sloppy that the administration effectively has no idea who's joining the agency's ranks. We're all collectively in the dark about whom the state is arming, tasking with the most sensitive of law enforcement work, and then sending into America's streets. You also write later on that they accepted you despite not filling out all the paperwork, sending them the background check, or the many other steps they asked you for. So how does this relate to what we just saw now with, for instance, with Renee Good? And what are your thoughts on that and on ICE's behavior in general?
Yeah, so the officer that murdered Renee Good was a veteran ICE officer. He'd been in since 2017. So he's not a product of what I experienced. He's just a product of ICE, which has been an evil organization from the start. But you are getting introduced into this organization that already has awful culture and a culture of not respecting human life or human rights, due process, any of that stuff. Now, on top of it, you're getting, they had 10,000 ICE agents last year at this time. Now they have 22,000. So 10,000 to 22,000, it's over 100% increase, which means that they are flooding this already very bad organization with a bunch of ill-trained, ill-educated, unqualified, they haven't unchecked recruits. And so what you really do have is chaos. And we're seeing it, I think, in a lot of the videos. We're seeing a lot of ICE agents who, it's not just that they're doing evil things, which they are.
Yeah.
You're seeing videos of ICE agents not being able to throw someone to the ground and cuff them, which is crazy. That's a very basic police tactic that you would think they would know. You're seeing them not be able to catch people who are taunting them and then leaving. Now, again, I'm really glad they weren't able to throw that guy to the ground. I'm really glad that guy got away. I'm glad of this, but it just points to this. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on here, but
yeah, you can, yeah.
All right, this clusterfuck, this absolute clusterfuck we're seeing across the country of these goons with guns, just waving them around, pointing them at people. It's not just that they're evil; it's that they're completely ignorant and they've been given too much power and too much firepower.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. You actually talk about, I want to know if you could talk more about this, but vets calling the conscientious objector hotline.
I don't know about that, but I'm glad that's happening. As a veteran and as somebody who, the ICE agent that I talked to in that article was a veteran. And I know that you just had, I really enjoyed listening to your last guest.
Yeah, I actually just confused this with an article I'd read a different article because I was reading it. But, what did you learn from your experience in the military that you think sheds light on what is happening right now, both with ICE, but also kind of generally the way that Trump is using the military?
Yeah. So I joined the military in 2005. I was a true believer. I grew up in a household that voted Republican. I watched a lot of Fox News. I really thought that I was signing up to go and, help people get peace and democracy overseas and keep Americans safe at home, all that crap. I believed it all. And then I went to Afghanistan, and it became very obvious that's not at all what we were doing. And so I got out as soon as my time period was up, and I've changed a lot of my views since then. It was the catalyst for me really questioning everything that I believed. Not everyone came out with that message. You had people like Pete Hegseth who came out believing that we lost because we weren't brutal enough, which is not true. The Russians were plenty brutal in Afghanistan, and they lost there as well. Morality aside, it's just not the case. And then you've got people like the ICE agent that I spoke to who got out, wanted nothing to do with the military, but wasn't able to reassimilate into society, and so found himself drawn to law enforcement. And it's Catherine Billow has this great book called Bring the War Home, and we're seeing it here. That one's about Vietnam, but we're seeing it here. We sent people, young people, overseas to bring something we call democracy to people who did not want it at the barrel of a gun. And a lot of those people saw violence or participated in violence, and then we sent them home. And now we are seeing that same language deployed against people like Renee Good, domestic terrorists. This is it. They've truly brought the war home, and I don't think it would be possible without the 20 years we spent killing people overseas.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of talk about the, of course, the imperial boomerang, and we talked about that with our other guests. But can you talk about this ICE Expo in Dallas?
That was fascinating. Yeah, so they had me get it was an Eventbrite event, which is how it's really professional. They had it on Eventbrite, and I got my 9 a.m. time slot. We had to pick a time slot so that they wouldn't be overwhelmed by the crowds of patriots who want to become ICE agents. Well, there were no lines. There was no line to get in through security. There was no line to present my paperwork. There was a line of 6 people to get the initial interview. There was no line to talk to the ICE agent. I'd say in the esports arena where it was held, which has a capacity of tens of thousands, there were maybe 150 people in there. Couldn't really tell whether there were more white people or Hispanic people in there. It was neck and neck, which is interesting. Mostly male. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Yeah. And just kind of grim. There was this propaganda video playing over and over and over again overhead. They had those defend the homeland posters. It was very surreal.
Right. And what were some of the scary things that you learned about what they expect ICE officers to do?
Yeah, so talking to this ICE agent was illuminating. Basically, and it's funny because, this is somebody who very clearly believed that what he was doing was right. And what he is doing, basically, the line that people have taken out, which I'm glad people are noticing, is the thing about some people get due process. Well,
right.
Everybody is supposed to get due process, but for him, it was just some people. He really wanted me to understand that I wasn't going to be able to just get out there with a badge and a gun immediately. I was going to have to do a bunch of paperwork. Funnily enough, the far right has taken that to mean that I was applying for a secretarial position.
Right.
What was really happening is that the ICE officer was so used to people coming up to me like, when can I get these MFs? Like,
right.
That he felt like he had to tell me like, hey, calm your roll. You're going to probably be pushing paperwork for the first 6 months before we let you out there to fuck people up. So that kind of speaks to the attitude that they were expecting and that they were dealing with, I think, and the culture. They had the ICE agent who was here before the surge, passing on a culture of due process is optional, and those people commit a lot of crimes like domestic violence and DUIs, which is something he said. So that's the culture that's already there, and then you're adding on top of it these people who are just coming in, raring to go and abuse people.
Right. And how did you think that they saw immigrants, the people that you were speaking to?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest tell was the thing where the agent was talking about how, the way we get ICE, we get these people is when cops do stops for things like DUI or domestic violence, the things these people do.
Right.
The idea that these people are criminal, these are
right.
criminal elements, and just generally that. It's unfortunately, there's not a secret, right? This is the same attitude we see Bovino talking about. We see Christy Noble, we see all of them talk about this idea that people who are here illegally are illegal. Like they have done a crime instead of what they have done, which is come to a new country to try to make a better life for themselves and commit crimes at a lower rate than people who were born here.
Right. Which is, of course, you'd have no idea about that. The fact that is a pretty, significant statistic that gets very little attention, that they commit crimes. People who are not born here commit crimes at lower rates than people who are born here.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, it's personal to me in some ways because my father immigrated from Syria in the 70s, which is another thing that a background check might have dug up, that I have a lot of family in Syria. I feel like that might have been a thing that they might have wanted to ask about, but since they didn't do a background check, they never got to that point. But, you know, I mean, he came here, he loved this country more than anyone I've ever known. A lot of people who immigrate to this country do so because they want to be American. And the beautiful thing about America is that anyone can become an American. You can come here and you can, I mean, that's the idea, right? Obviously the reality is a little different than the dream, but the dream is a beautiful dream and people come here for the dream. And it's such a sick thing to demonize people who I think are more American than a lot of people who were born here.
Right. Yeah. Were you, what made you go from someone who was in the army to someone who's like, you're on some kind of list, right? An Antifa list.
Oh yeah, I'm on antifawatch.com. You can go look me up. Whoever wrote that article, you feel bad for him. You know, we did all that work, all that research, and it didn't help. You know, they didn't. Yeah, you must feel terrible. But yeah, I mean, honestly, my catalyst was going to Afghanistan. I was in signals intelligence. One of the things that I did was exploit the phones of people who were detained. And I think one time I found a video that was suspicious, and every other time it was just Bollywood videos. And you see enough of that and you start to wonder, like, hey, are we the baddies? Are we the ones who are being evil here? And what else have I been lied to about? Like, if they lied to me about this, is there more? And it turned out the answer was yes. And over the course of several years, I changed nearly everything that I believe.
Wow. You know, something else that I think is important, and you actually posted a video today. I mean, you didn't you retweeted it, but there was another event in Minneapolis where a woman tried to drive down the street where a protest had broken out in front of a home ICE was raiding, saying she had a doctor's appointment to get to, and ICE agents busted out her window, cut off her seatbelt, and pulled her out right before arresting her. There's video of this, but I didn't prep it, but I'll send it to Brad in case we have time to show it. But I mean, the thing about the Renee Good story is that it's really captured the imagination of the nation, and that's really good. But we also have to remember that this is like really not an isolated incident. This is just one where a lot of it was captured on video, where, you know, it's a white woman who is a mother of three. And so very, you know, the audience, like America, is primed to see this person as sympathetic. But this is I mean, this is actually systemic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, in no way was this an isolated incident. And even without the myriad videos that are coming out every single day of atrocities, of true crimes against humanity, you hear the way Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, the way they talk about this, they praise this man, Jonathan Ross, this murderer. They praise him. They say that he's a hero. This is not an accident. This is not unfortunate. This is not a matter of training either, to be clear. Like, some people have taken this article to be like, I'm complaining that ICE isn't doing enough screening or training. That's not really the point. The point is that they are creating an environment where these kinds of people are getting hired and then are encouraged to do unspeakable violence with absolutely no oversight whatsoever. Absolute immunity, they said. I mean, that's insane.
Right. Yeah. And how do you see the connection between what is done abroad and what comes back home?
I mean, it's truly the same thing, Katie. I really think, I mean, from the language, everything, you know, these are terrorists. They're smuggling weapons of mass destruction into the United States. You know, we need more power to go after these people. It's for the safety of America. This is the same logic, the exact same logic that was sold us the war on terror 20 years ago. And you'd think we would have learned something, but apparently, I mean, I think enough people have maybe, but a lot of people are apparently just fine to go with it again. And just the dehumanization, the idea that some people are terrorists and some people aren't. And terrorist was always a very racially coded term that always very specifically meant a certain kind of person. And that same word is being applied to brown people again today. It's really, I mean, there's a sick justice to it in that we inflicted this horror on countries overseas, and now it has come home, and as it should. I wish it hadn't. I want it to stop, but there's a logic to it, you know?
Right. That we don't just get away with it. Not that we're celebrating this at all. Like, we shouldn't have done this to other countries, and that's unfortunate, and it shouldn't be happening to us now. But it also, again, it's like part of the imperial boomerang. It's just hard you can't isolate those two things.
Yeah.
And of course, then you get people who come back from, not that this is the case, but you do get people who come back from the military, who are, you know, there's like high rates of suicide. There's, you know, these stories about double murder suicides. These, you know, terrible stories. And of course, soldiers are totally glorified, but also they cut like their benefits once they're back.
Everyone loves veterans till we start talking. Then we don't like us so much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what else do you think your military experience provides in terms of an understanding of like how we're seen by other countries?
I mean, I do wonder about that. I think, the world has watched us do exactly this to other countries for decades, not just the war on terror.
Right.
Going back to Vietnam, and you could go back before that if you wanted, and then now it's happening here. And I have to imagine, I don't know. It's just, there's a horror to it that the rot has really reached the heart now. And it's not that it's making us less dangerous. That's the thing. It's not that we've taken ourselves out. This cancer is metastasized, and now it's threatening to spread all over the world. We're threatening to invade Greenland, which is a sentence I can't believe I have to say out loud and have it be real. We're threatening to do all kinds of things to all kinds of countries, and no one knows when it's going to happen. And Trump is using the same language to talk about those overseas adventures that he is to talk about stuff at home. It's so sick how it really has just all become the same messy pot of stew.
Yeah. And we actually have a Brad, can we show that the tweet from Ken Klippenstein? Because I thought this was kind of fascinating. Ken Klippenstein, the great journalist.
I love him.
He tweeted out, immigration officers received a quote legal refresher, end quote, reminding them that personal insults and rude gestures are legal per documents leaked to me. I'm actually surprised that they would do that. I thought they would be doubling down, but yeah. And it says, so go back, Brad, for what to the first thing. Legal refresher, First Amendment and Fourth Amendment considerations. Okay, let's see the next one. What is not a violation of 18 U.S.C. 111? Profanity or personal insults directed at officers, rude gestures directed at officers, arguing with officers, challenging officers' authority, talking back to officers during police contact. So I'm actually
how many times, Katie, have we seen video of regular people on the street saying something, maybe not even profane, but just, I don't know, ask them to see their badge, let alone calling them a name. And the reply to that is they get thrown to the ground face first and handcuffed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Filming. The ACLU has collected a massive trove of cases where ICE brutalized or detained people for filming, which is completely legal and protected by the Constitution.
Yeah. And what else are you working on? Because you are a prolific journalist.
So I mostly write on my Substack, which you can find at firewalledmedia.com. I don't have anything lined up at the moment. I'm kind of, things are going so quickly that one kind of takes it as they come, but I'm trying to keep up with the developments on ICE. I've been talking a lot about what I think needs to be done, which I personally believe we are past the time where our governors need to be calling up the National Guard to protect their people. The people that voted for them, their constituents, need to be protected from this invasion that is happening in our streets. So I'll be continuing to write very vehemently about that. And I do cover New York City protests and stuff like that. So, once ICE is done with Minneapolis, well, we'll see.
Yeah, and I want to share actually Prem Tucker, who I love. He comes on the Katie Halper show. He's a great guest. Everyone should have him. He just tweeted this thing, which is pretty disturbing. So this is unbelievable framing. He writes, the woman killed by an ICE agent this is CNN. The woman killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis last week served on the board of her son's school, which linked to documents encouraging parents to monitor ICE and directing them to training. New documents shed light on Renee Good's ties to ICE monitoring efforts in Minneapolis, which is just so ironic because, first of all, you're a couple things. One is good. That makes me like her more, but that's irrelevant. And also the irony is that it actually is like, no wonder why, I wonder why people are nervous about ICE. Maybe because they go ahead and do something like kill this person. Like, if anything, that just proves how right she was to be doing that.
Absolutely.
But this is CNN. This isn't Fox News. You know what I mean? This is not Fox News. Like, this is CNN, and they are smearing this woman.
Yeah. It's It's terrifying. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of people. It's like the more you have to lose. So I think a lot of these mainstream media institutions are running scared. You know, they know that Trump could crush them, has tried to. A lot of them have paid him money already. And it's pathetic to see them, embracing as though that's, first of all, as though that's a bad thing. And you're right, like as though that has anything to do. That's not a capital offense. That's not even a jailable offense. It is completely legal, actually, to encourage people to monitor ICE, and it's okay for a school to say that too. This is our patriotic duty, frankly. I'm so sorry, but this is, if you love this country and you're not thinking about how to push back against these traitorous cowards in our streets, I don't know what you are doing.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. It's very late, and I'm so appreciative of this. Any final things that you want to say?
Not really. Thank you for having me on this show. Check me out at firewildmedia.com if you enjoyed the article, people who are watching. And if I can quote some radical liberals in our past, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So have a good night, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Good. I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great night, Laura. What a great show that was. But also, I want to end on some good news. People may know about Betar. Betar is this insane Zionist organization that went after lots of people. They said I wasn't going to be able to go into Israel, which was funny because they put me on the same list that Tony Judd and Adrian Rich are on, and they definitely won't be able to go to Israel because they are dead. But we have an exciting announcement. So some good news finally. 1 second. Let me just see. Nate, can I have that link that I sent you to the tweet with the Betar news? Hold on 1 second. Or did I send it to you, Brad? Hold on, let me just look this up. 1 second. I'll prep a real video where I show them. Okay, actually, you know what? We're going to come full circle because there was some criticism of Mamdani tonight, but we're also going to give him some credit, reminding people where he is. Okay, Brad, can you show this? Oh, wait. Actually, let's go back to Prem. We'll do a Prem tweet once again. Brad, can you show this, please? There you go. And then we can also show the, I'll also show the Zohran one. But these are the people who put like a beeper in Norman Finkelstein's hands, in reference, or tried to hand him a beeper. Okay, here we go. Prem writes, an hour after New York Attorney General announces Betar must stop targeting New Yorkers, Betar tweets Islamophobia.org asking, what should we do with it? Site targets NYC Mayor Zohran Mamdani as an enemy to the West. Betar is subject to a $50,000 fine for violating the deal. So, okay, that's a tweet from Prem. It shows that if you scroll down, the news is that New York Attorney General Tish James announces deal to dissolve anti-speech group Betar. James investigated Betar for targeting Muslim, Arab, Palestinian, and Jewish New Yorkers. Attorney General James stops violence, harassment, intimidation from New York extremist group. OAG investigation found Betar engaged in bias-motivated assaults, threats, and harassment targeting Muslim, Arab, Palestinian, and Jewish New Yorkers. But I guess that's the good news. The bad news is that they're still harassing Zohran Mamdani. But I sent you another tweet, Brad, just to show. It's a Zohran one. We'll let him have the. For years, Betar has sowed a campaign of hatred across New York, trafficking in Islamophobia, extremism, and harassing those with whom they disagreed. There is no place for their bigotry in our politics, and I'm grateful. New York State Attorney General unflagging pursuit of justice, and that's in response to the news that basically they're going to be disbanding, which I can't believe it. Yeah. Well, guys, this was a jam-packed show. Oh. This was a jam-packed show. I put on Do Not Disturb. I don't know why it did that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Are we going to do any Patreon for this? I should have texted during it. If you're watching this live, you definitely saw the whole thing. And if you're watching this later, there's a chance there's a chance that some of this is on Patreon at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. How do you like that? That gives us a lot of flexibility, right? Yeah. So perhaps to see the rest of this, go to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Thank you all so much. And make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you next week. And make sure you definitely subscribe, because we may be doing an extra stream. Bye, everyone.
I did everything right and they indicted me. And I don't know what the I'm doing.
Antifa!